This tale kicks off at the royal court on the day King's 17th prince, Hell, hit 15, because on his birthday he finally stepped into adulthood, and the king celebrated by handing Hell his own dominion. Heel couldn't shake his misery, because the place he got assigned to was already a disaster, and it was on him to fix it all. So they hauled him by boat straight to the island, and the moment he spotted it, his hopes crashed, because the gift he'd been promised was nothing but reefs. They called it Shield Reef, and it took him a brutal 15 days from the capital to get there. The place was so far out in the dark that even pirates wouldn't waste their time. Nobody bothered, and it just stayed abandoned. Right after they dropped him off by the island, the escorts turned around at once, not even bothering to see if he could land there safely. Either way, this was his post, yet he couldn't even spot where he was meant to land, because all he had was a giant rock, now ruled by the kingdom of Sanphalis, 17th prince. When he was finally handed the Shield Reef, his other siblings laughed in his face and mocked him non-stop. Since he was already miserable with his weak abilities, the real gut punch was worse. He didn't even have a proper crest. Everyone was born with a crest, and his brothers were rocking these insanely powerful ones, while his own chance at greatness was still waiting. That crest on his gear was a total mystery. Nobody could even guess what it truly did. He tested every trick he could think of to make his crest react, but nothing happened, until the failure clobbered his family with shame. He'd already gone to his dad earlier, begging for even a single representative answer, but the king was so proud of his own words that he wouldn't budge for the request, because deep down, he knew this meant he was basically getting exiled. Or they tossed him to some busted, uninhabited pile of rocks. Then panic hit, and he started imagining getting executed just to clear trees, and realizing this was somehow worse because he couldn't bear the thought of dying. He spotted a small cluster of rocks and went for it, trying to land there while doing everything he could to keep his boat from smashing into them. He tore open the air with wind magic and sent them racing. But his magic was so pathetic it couldn't even twitch a feather. He somehow survived a brutal landing, then hauled the supplies out of the boat, and decided to stash them somewhere safe before anything else. And spotted a cave far off in the distance, then hauled his supplies straight to it. But what he saw there was pure nightmare fuel. He spotted dozens of dead skeletons scattered everywhere, proof that some poor souls washed up on this island and never made it out. Fear hit him hard, but there was no way out, so he pushed through and made it work. He shoved the supplies inside anyway, then stared at the ocean with pure hopelessness burning in his eyes. He found the place breathtaking, peaceful, miles away from all the capital's chaos. But man, he couldn't shake the feeling that things should have been different. He slapped himself hard to snap back to his senses, and he swore to himself he'd claw his way out alive, no matter what. He chose his plan. First, he'd beg a passing ship for help, but only if it wasn't from his own country. His choices were grim since everyone steered clear of the reef, and there wasn't any detour around here. Plus, he still had to wrestle with every other problem survival threw at him. The food and water he packed would barely get him through a month, and his magic couldn't save him. So he decided to haul in rainwater, stash it in barrels, and start fishing. He decided to clean the cave first, then buried the scattered bones immediately because they were just a bad, dirty mess. He yanked out his pickaxe and started digging, sparks flying with every swing. Then he heard it, the exact voice that made him acquire a mining tool. He couldn't shake it. What in the world was that voice, sneaking straight into his head? He heard that voice again, and this time he snapped, "What are you?" The voice came from his crest, Cave King, and even though it had an advisor feature, it still couldn't talk to him. This was the day he finally realized the crest he'd been born with wasn't just any mark. It was the Cave King, and he couldn't believe it had chosen this exact moment to wake up. He figured it had to be, because he'd never once stepped into a cave, or the mines, inside the royal capital. The crest lit up again, telling him it didn't just help. It supercharged his mining too, plus his supports, so he could climb ranks inside the cave. All that information hit him at once, and he snapped, deciding to start mining right away. The crest kicked in, and the cave lit up in sudden patches right before his eyes. Those bright white sections were the perfect targets to dig into. And it was done right for him, so there'd be no surprise cave collapses or dangerous breaks. He took a shot and slammed right into one of those shiny spots in front, and boom, a brutal jolt hit the exact spot. But when he looked at the results, he nearly froze. His mining was crushingly effective, and the crest's night vision boost had him fully backed. He could mine in peace, so he wasted no time. First, he carved out a spot to sleep for himself and kept mining with pure grit for a while, refusing to quit. Before long, he wasn't just doing it, he was actually having fun. He kicked deeper into the cave, mining a few more precious meters. It hit him the deeper he pushed into the cave. His mining rate and raw strength were climbing with every step, because leveling up those linked skills let him dig more than ever before. Then the crest advisor leaned in and asked if he wanted to go grab the 168 rocks he'd already dug up. He started to wonder where those recovered rocks would end up. Then the crest snapped the truth into place. They were going right into the crest itself. Then he kept digging deeper and deeper, like he couldn't stop, which is when he finally realized it was almost impossible to mine with all those rocks piled up around him. He went back for the rocks and boom, just like Minecraft, they slipped straight into his inventory. The crest pushed things further, unlocking an automatic retrieval option to back him up. Then it clicked, if he kept this pace, he might reach the other side, so he dropped down and started digging straight downward. After digging a little more, the crest finally clued him in. He was now 10 meters below where he'd started, but the crazy part was he still had no clue what meters even meant. Then he paused and cracked open his inventory to check what he had. He stared in disbelief. One swing of his pick and he hauled up copper, bronze, and even gold ore. And yeah, he couldn't help thinking gold probably wouldn't do him much good on a deserted island. Then another rock snagged his attention, the magic stone, and he had no clue what it could do. The crest even started feeding him info about the rocks, like it knew exactly what he'd need. So it hit him, this magic stone didn't just sit there. It turbocharged his magic power, and the bigger the stone, the more his power surged. Right after that, the next stone that caught his eye was the turtle stone. That could stretch a person's life by one whole day. When he finally found something like this, something that could even stretch his lifespan, his world lit up, and he couldn't stop thanking his lucky crest, because all his harsh thoughts about the Shield Reef flipped into raw, undeniable awe at how incredible this place really was. He got so locked in on mining that he straight up forgot to even scan for ships that could help him escape. Soon, he pushed 30 meters deeper into the cave, and his inventory exploded with rocks and ores. Among those stones, the ones that grabbed his attention most were the magic stone and the turtle stone. He figured using them could level up his magic fast, and that was exactly what he was going for. After draining his last spell, he spent every single one of the 90 magic stones he had on him. He braced himself for a huge change, but after using them, he felt absolutely nothing. So he decided to put it to the test right then. He cleared the trail behind him, digging furiously to make the path back. He unleashed wind magic, and the cave instantly got swallowed by roaring gusts, every inch filled with swirling air, and he hauled every last rubble, bone, and stone out of the cave, then blasted it all flying into the outside world. His mind reeled when he realized this power was coming straight from him. He couldn't wrap his head around it. Just 90 magic stones had him this powered up. After that, the slime came crawling in, drawn straight to his magic like it had a mind of its own. And it shot straight for him. No hostility in that slime at all. It was like it actually liked heal, and he couldn't help wondering why. After 3 rounds of it, he finally stopped fighting the new life and started getting used to it. He kicked off the day by checking his tools and stuffing up on food, ready to dig like he always did. He grabbed the slime he'd met 3 days ago, made it his sidekick, and christened it Shell. 3 days ago, a slime showed up in front of him, so he finally remembered exactly what slimes are. The crest lit up and told him he could tame the slime, so he tried taming monsters, hoping they'd fall in line with him. But it didn't work on the hostile ones, and the ones he asterisk could tame. Those creatures were feared and hated by the very kingdom he once called home. But in this cave, nobody was around to judge a single thing he did. He tamed the slime, then crowned him with the name Shell. He felt relieved to finally have another living soul by his side, convinced Shell couldn't possibly understand him. Yet then, to his shock, Shell could tell what he meant, and somehow she finally understood him. It then threw its weight behind heel, powering his mining hustle as his full-on support. He said Shell was shockingly smart, and that's why he could finally reach places no one else could even touch before. He even started waving gestures at Shell, telling it exactly what to form next, and that move supercharged his progress, pushing his mindings up to 3 times faster than before. With the momentum surging, he tore through the magic. 500 stones, all fed straight into himself. Now that his magic was fully powered up, he didn't have to stress about food ever again. And during those nights, Shell would curl up as his pillow, right in the exact shape he wanted. Later, while he was mining, he stumbled on about 10 more slimes, then realized he could actually talk to them and show off how special that Shell was compared to all the others. It was fine with him, just don't get in the way of his mining, because while he slept, he couldn't stop wondering what he'd dig up tomorrow. Next morning, she jolted him awake like she was determined to catch him before he could even think. Yell out a weird message while you bounce around like you've lost your mind. Shell was doing that, and he couldn't figure out why. And he caught where Shell was desperately trying to lead him. He spotted someone and sprinted straight over, without wasting a second, only to spot 3 weird beings closing in on his island, green goblins, while their boat got smashed against the rocks. He hesitated, because he couldn't shake the fear that they might turn out to be deadly for him. So yeah, back then, most humans wiped out goblins on sight, but Shell didn't want that for him. She wanted him to help instead. And he realized, the hard way, that abandoning them to die right here would leave him feeling sick to his soul. He cast a recovery spell to save them and hauled them to a safer place. Then he bolted right away, leaving them tucked safely out of danger. Once their lives were finally safe, he dashed back into the cave. He told Shell to report any change in their condition, then stepped away to stand guard and watch them himself. He knew one slip around those goblins could spell an ambush, like they'd lunge the second they got the chance. Still, he figured he'd be fine if anything went wrong, and with his magic power boosted, he had to admit he felt a little uneasy. Chose to cool his temper and dive right back into mining. He plunged into the digging. Mining felt so good he couldn't stop, and before he knew it, it turned into his favorite hobby, like it erased everything else from his mind. And before long, he dove into his inventory, hunting for anything new. This time he stumbled onto two brand new stones. One was the shining stone, the kind that never dulls, and the other was the musogi stone, which can rip curses off anyone, no matter what they are. Still, he figured these were useless on him. He already had night vision, and out here in this dead silent place, nobody was even around to curse him. He refused to stop, kept digging with relentless grit, and after what felt like an eternity, Shell raced over to warn him those goblins were up, fully awake. He crept over to scout the goblins, then ducked and vanished the second he heard them stirring. So as a safety move, he decided to eavesdrop on their conversation, while one of them kept gaping at Heel's food and the others tried to stop him. The general goblin. El felt Heel's presence and snapped into full guard on the spot. The princess goblin snapped at El to drop his weapon, because Heel was the one who saved them, but El just couldn't bring himself to do it, stuck thinking Heel was pure danger. Heel couldn't believe it when he heard they were speaking the same language, and that meant those goblins might have come from the same continent as him. He told them he had zero plans to hurt them, but El couldn't just swallow it. He refused to trust a human like that. El said he's probably cooking up something, and just looking at Heel's face proved it, because Heel was totally thrown. Shell snapped into a mirror, and the moment Heel spotted his reflection in, he couldn't believe how terrifying he looked right now. So dangerous, it felt like he might actually scare people just by standing there. And once he started mining like crazy every single day, he realized he was slowly turning into something different. So he snapped his face back into place, fixed his expression, and told El, "Go ahead and eat my food, I can always mine more." He proved he could feast whenever he wanted, whipping up wind magic to snatch fish right out of the water. El's eyes widened at how brutally strong he was, and he demanded to know why he didn't just end them all if power like that was in his hands. Princess Goblin kept pushing until El finally got her message. But she couldn't keep standing. She crumpled to the ground, and panic exploded as they worried over their princess. He'll corner her and ask, "So, you're still not healed?" The elder goblin leaned in and told him straight up that it wasn't true. And then Rai got hit with a life-shrinking curse that tore years off him. They broke down in despair when their princess's time finally came, and the moment she started shedding sorrowful tears, it felt like all hope just vanished. Hill watched disaster closing in and yanked Vari and El away before she could sacrifice her life, along with theirs. He told them he could cure her, but El snapped back in fury, saying they'd tried everything. After that, he grabbed that Misogi stone he'd found earlier and slammed it into Rai. Since her lifespan got cut too, he went all in and hammered her with 79 turtle stones. They couldn't figure out where he was getting those rare stones from, but the only thing that truly mattered was this. Princess Rai came back to life, fresher and stronger than ever, while Rai was left totally stunned, because she swore she had died. El finally realized Heel wasn't a bad guy at all, just the one who saved his princess, so he dropped to the ground, bowed in apology, and let his head crack the earth. He'll ask him to come along and grab something to eat right as they introduce themselves, and he'll be stunned all over again when he realizes just how strong El is, because earlier El smashed the stone floor with his own head, and yeah, that's how scary these goblins really are. They finally sat down together, and El burst into a full apology before introducing himself as General El of the Belden tribe. Then he stepped back and let her go, saying she was Rodden's daughter, the king of the Belden tribe, and the elder goblin Vari followed by declaring, loud and proud, that he was the Belden tribe's shaman. After they get introduced, he jumps right in and tells them he's the prince from the kingdom of Sanfelies, and then reveals he used to be. El figured he could have used every bit of magic he'd seen before. Maybe he'd end up as strong as the prince, but he shut that down, explained he only got what he did thanks to the magic stones he'd dug up. Hyld leaned in and demanded to know why they'd come to this island. El told him everything, how their hometown was wiped out when the orcs came and burned it to the ground. Their royal family nearly got wiped out, and only Princess Reese lived. So for the past year, they've been hunting for a new home, bouncing from clan to clan with no luck, while humans kept driving them off too, until they finally set their sights on the new world with everyone left. But then disaster struck, their ship crashed, and suddenly they had no clue whether anyone else was still alive. Princess Rai snapped at Very not to blame himself, saying that even if they'd stayed on land, things would have still spiraled into the same fate they're living through now. She thanked Heel for saving monsters like them. Peel lied through a smile, telling them it was fine, while secretly hurting for them after hearing what happened. She admitted she wasn't going to last, but when that crushing pain in her chest finally vanished, she let out a breath and was ready to die in peace. Heel told her it was still too early to call it quits. He told her that tons of turtle stones were buried and dormant underground, and with them they could keep extending her life, again and again, as long as they wanted. He told them, if I keep digging for a whole week, I just might be able to buy her over a year's worth of life. Elle snapped that asking him for more was too much, then offered to help him dig too, so they'd both get it done. Heel told him it's fine. Ellen Rin thanked him for saving her life. Then she stared at him and demanded to know why he'd give her something this precious. He told her not to worry, saying he was digging just for fun, and hearing that made him grin because now he wasn't alone. Now emotion hit her hard. She finally realized she could live even more. Like something any person would feel once they've been yanked back from the edge of death. Hal brushed it off like it was nothing, then stared at her and asked what he should do next. He already had plenty of ice axes, but the crest pointed out that if he dealt with the digging spots, he could even hand chunks of his power to the monsters he tamed. Then he leaned in and asked if they wanted to be tamed by him, claiming it was so they could dig alongside him, and promising they could choose freely, because he'd hand them turtle stones either way. They were thrilled by the offer and jumped in with him, right alongside his tamed monsters. And we also agreed to serve him. She couldn't stand the idea of sitting back while everyone else worked, so she stepped in to help, and she swore she'd repay the debt she owed him. Then the moment hit, he started brainstorming names like it mattered, and he christened Elle as Elvin. And Varys swapped into Vari, and read to Riene, then cheered over their new names, swearing they'd hand him everything they could from that day forward. Then he pulled out that shining stone and turned it into torches for everyone else, because they didn't have his night vision powers. They pointed out the gleaming spots, the real places worth digging, and he showed them exactly how to mine from this moment on. He slammed into the wall ahead of him, and it shattered completely. He told them they'd be digging like this, and he made sure they understood one thing too: he didn't start off this way either. Next up was snatching the rocks, since the other slimes couldn't auto-retrieve them, so he ordered Shell to explain, step by step, how to gather both rocks and ores. He was convinced that practice could turn anyone into perfection. From that moment on, they all dropped their separate plans and started mining side by side, throwing their collective effort into the work, and that cave he'd been digging suddenly turned alive, buzzing like it had a pulse. After that, Heel was stuck, replaying one heartbreak after another from his past. They bullied him non-stop for being weak, and it crushed him. He tried to shield the monster as bullies hauled him down, tied him up, and tortured him to the brink. Something was stuck in his neck, and it instantly dragged his mind back to that incident. After all that digging, Elvin leaned in and asked if he was worn out, and Rihanna chimed in too, asking if he was okay. He heard Rihanna playing and then told them, "I'm just thinking, no, I'm not tired," because that cave king crest of his had him digging on. She told him not to burn himself out, and he promised he wouldn't. Then the moment he did, he caught the smell of something amazing. And it turned out that sweet smell was apple pie. Rihanna had baked it for everyone, and the whole crew lit up, thrilled to finally get something delicious and new. It's only been 3 days since he met the goblins, and in that short time, they've already cooked up a bunch of new stuff, like a bathroom for a reservoir, and a plain little kitchen, and honestly, that's what made all the difference. He could chow down on Rihanna's cooking. Everything she made tasted ridiculously amazing. It was always so good, and when she saw him dig in and actually enjoy it, she couldn't stop smiling. And he was thrilled to see Rihanna put his country gifts to good use. Sorry, Elvin didn't realize mining could feel this wild and fun. And Varys nodded along, sharing the same thoughts, because nothing made them happier than pushing to stretch their princess's life for as long as possible. She poured out her gratitude, thanking them for saving her life and standing by her. Day by day, things kept getting better and better, but they still had a mountain of work left to do. He didn't have the resources he needed yet, plus a whole pile of problems hit at once, because he started hunting for more than just fish, and even his clothes were falling apart piece by piece. He had almost no hope, until he slammed a ship to a stop, then cashed in his gems to buy supplies, buying just enough time to keep going. But the real shock hit him inside. Little by little, his mind shifted, and doubts began to rise in him like a true ruler of a whole country. He decided to keep mining for now, chasing more turtle stones for Rihanna, and he was hoping, really hoping, to stumble on fresh new ones. Soon, he struck a hollow pocket in the mine while digging, and he hurried over to see what was inside, only to find strange, mismatched stones sitting there, each one looking totally different, like something way bigger was going on. They blazed orange like a sunset on fire, and they looked nothing like the shining stones. And after pushing a little farther ahead, he stopped dead and realized the dirt under his feet wasn't the same at all. Suddenly, he snapped his head up, and there it was, a huge spider looming right in front of him. He froze in place, stared straight into the spider's eyes up close, and the fear hit him. What if it ate him right now? He jumped into action with magic, blasting the spider back. But out of nowhere, the spider bolted away from him. When he finally saw the whole picture, it turned out the spider was the one everyone feared most, because it was fighting to protect its own babies. And once he understood that, his anger melted into guilt, and he couldn't help feeling bad for scaring it like that. Then the crest bled the news, tameable monsters were showing up. And after a while, Elvin just waited, heart hammering, as he begged Heel to come back. He jolted when he realized his boss was back, only now the spiders were marching right behind him. He'll rush over and apologize for scaring him, then tell the others that he finally got the cave spiders to team up with him. Varys stared, shocked by just how enormous those spiders were. Varys told Heel the silk from these spiders was tougher than iron, their fangs packed lethal poison, and they were so vicious they'd even hunt monsters and people. He finally realized the dusty stuff piled in the back of the cave wasn't dirt at all. It was their own waste. And then Varys burst in with the next piece of good news. They figured out the cave spiders. Dirt could enrich the soil, so crops would grow easier, and farming would suddenly get way simpler for them. After that, Varys demanded to know where they could farm in a place like this, and then Heel grinned and said, "I've got something to show you." He led them straight to a tunnel, and ordered them to lean in and take a look. They stared in disbelief at all those stairs, and demanded to know where they came from. Then he snapped back that he'd built them on the way back with Tarin, the spider, because the path was too tight for her. So he carved out these stairs and widened the whole area using fresh tricks from his power as the Cave King. Now he could sculpt that mined area however he wanted, sift through his inventory to process and synthesize anything he carried, and even bolt on wild new perks, like night vision, so he could tame monsters too. Elvin and the rest cheered at the good news and pushed themselves even harder the next day, while Hyle announced a welcome party for Taran and his kids. So Ryan volunteered to grill a mountain of fish, and he also dreamed of reshaping this island later, adding even more to it. Elvin and Varys kept forging ice axes, and Varys promised he'd jump in whenever they got stuck, because making iron tools in a place like this was a massive leap forward for them. While Rihanna was ordered to knit clothes out of spider silk. Then he barked an order. Everything was to be dumped in one single spot. Then he quickly discovered one more terrifying thing about Taran. Its speed was faster than anything he'd ever seen. Then he took the spot he'd built up with spider junk and scattered it with an apple seed. And it shot to full size in practically no time at all. Heel had no idea it would happen this fast, and the moment it did, everything suddenly made sense. Tarn was so huge he finally clocked the truth. This tree didn't grow from waste at all. It fed on the sunstones hiding in that cave. He searched everywhere and still couldn't find those stones again, so he swore to guard them with his life and keep them safe. He shouted for Rihanna, then ditched her to run things. She laid out the sunstones and mapped out the plantations, then shot him a careful question, "Are you sure?" and swore she wouldn't let him down. Still, he trusted her with it, then hitched up the riding shell and rode all the way back to finish the job. With everyone locked in on mining, he realized he could crank it up even harder and mine even more himself. Right now, his mission was simple: dig up more turtle stones. And so far, Rihanna had already gained 5 years of life, but he couldn't shake his fear. She was only 15 just like him, and he knew she might be chasing a longer future too. So he dug in, convinced he'd stay the fastest, most efficient miner out of everyone. While digging, he pried a white stone out of the ground and tucked it safely into his collection. That white stone turned out to be a dragon orb. One touch, and it could drag someone back from the dead. He snapped and called the others over at once, demanding they start digging right where he'd been standing. He dug and dug at that spot, but not a single extra dragon orb showed up. So he figured it was a good thing, because if he could revive anyone he wanted using dragon stones, that power would have been straight up terrifying. He shoved the stone outside his inventory for now. Then he heard Elvin calling his name fast, like it was urgent. He couldn't stop guessing what had happened, so he bolted away and left the dragon orb sitting at a random spot, and sprinted upstairs. Then the stone came crashing back down, smashing into a corpse. Elvin leaned in and told Heel, "I can see our comrades' ship closing in on us." And he was dead certain it was them. His gut nailed it. They practically lit up when they saw him. Even more shocking, Elvin's daughter and the rest of the goblins from their tribe were still alive. Then he warned Elvin, docking their ship here would be deadly, so Elvin had to steer his boat straight toward them. He figured the elves and the others might roll out with their tribe, so he loaded them up with a ton of sunstones as a goodbye gift, so they could rebuild their home wherever they wanted. Elvin stared at him, completely baffled, trying to figure out what he was even trying to say, and then Hyle told him they had to bail on this remote spot, because getting out would be way better for them. He promised, "We'll start trading as soon as we find a solid place to settle down." Hearing them say they were leaving him left them utterly stunned. Then Elvin blared his request at the top of his lungs, begging them not to leave them stranded like this. He told him straight up, they weren't going anywhere, because they'd sworn a pledge to stay by his side and never, ever abandon him. Rian flat out said they were his subordinates. And yeah, he felt on top of the world for a second. Then he snapped that this might be their only shot to get out like this. Then she leaned in and asked him point blank, if that was really true, would he come with them? He shot a glance back at that towering wall of rock, and memories hit him, back when escaping this place was all he ever wanted. But now everything was different, and Ryan finally understood exactly how this place made him feel. And she made it crystal clear. She wouldn't move an inch unless he stayed right there with her too. Elvin and Varys were dead set on the very same thing. It hit him so hard his emotions crashed through him. Then the ocean's calm got ripped apart. Waves surged, the sea churned, and the ship began to sink. Elvin's stomach dropped with worry. Most of those goblins on the ship couldn't swim at all. They wasted zero time and blasted off on the boat to pull them out of danger. Then he spots them sprinting, and he knows they might not reach the finish line in time. The moment hit, and his worst memories surged back into his eyes like a flashbang. For him being powerless to help anyone at all. But this time, he wasn't the same, so he launched himself straight for the edge of the cliff. And with fire in his eyes, he leaped straight off the cliff. He put his trust in him, because this time, it finally felt like hope wasn't dead, and he wasn't hopeless anymore. He dug his heels in, clung to his resolve, and trusted that King of Cave Crest to guide him. He hurled freeze magic into the ocean and turned the waves solid. He slammed the world into stillness, freezing every drop of water around the sinking ship and keeping it from tipping upside down. He stared in shock, because after pumping power through over 8,000 magic stones, he realized his strength had gone through the roof. He clung to the ice and ordered Elvin and the others to rush across it, because if they didn't, they'd all be lost. Elvin dove straight into the job, but then he slipped on the edge of on the ice. Heel didn't even think about it. Then Taran leaped in, along with Heel, and hauled Heel across the ice on her back, and right there Heel understood it. Taran's injured leg might be the key to turning this around. Then more of Taran's spider kids rushed in to help them too. And when he saw Elvin's heart sink, realizing he couldn't do a thing, he swallowed the pain, then felt nothing but deep gratitude toward the spiders. Shell also teamed up with Heel, and together with the other slimes, they jumped in to get everything done. He grabbed everyone and ordered them to pull the drowned ones to safety. He pushed back the ocean's tides with his magic, keeping them from spilling onto anyone else, while the slimes and spiders surged in. Elvin and the others teamed up to save everyone, and when the rescue finally succeeded, nobody died. Heal magic surged through the group, fixing every single wound left behind in the chaos. Reen grabbed Heel's hands, thanking him for saving them all, and still couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't know how to ever repay his debt. He told them he was more than satisfied, everyone was safe, and that alone brought him peace. Elvin was sobbing after finally meeting his daughter Fu. After all that time believing she was gone, when pure, overwhelming happiness hit so hard he could barely take it in that she was truly alive. And everyone lit up, thrilled to witness that emotional reunion. Heel insisted he never could have pulled this off alone. He was thanking the spiders, the slimes, and Rayna, Elvin, and Varys for helping him save every last member of the Belden tribe, because there's no way he could have done anything like this back then. Realizing just how much it had changed for him, he couldn't stop himself. He had to thank them for pushing him to become better. Then Varys pointed to a man lurking behind Heel and demanded to know who he was. Out of nowhere, a strange man showed up, and nobody saw it coming. Then he asked Varys if that man could have been on the ship. Varys shook his head and said there was no one like him. And still, the question gnawed at him. What if he'd actually met that guy in the cave? But nope, he wasn't dressed at all. The guy was totally naked. So he rushed up to him and tried to make him listen. The man just turned and walked off to catch up with the others and start eating. He was starving, so Rhiannon grabbed another bunch of fish and fired up the roast for them. Hellan Varys couldn't stop wondering who that mysterious man really was. The next day, Heel was busy hammering together rooms for everyone who just washed up on the island. He'd already tamed everyone once and even named them all. And yeah, the situation wasn't exactly perfect, but watching his island slowly wake up and get way livelier was more than enough to make him smile. It also lit a fire under him, turning the moment into pure urgency too. To crank up the production of supplies and food, Rhiannon showed up to heal him, then shoved her homemade juice into his hands and dared him to try it. The grape juice tasted insanely good because it was squeezed straight from fresh grapes, which helped Rhiannon grow, thanks to sunstones and the grape seeds she'd stumbled on aboard that boat. She told him the plantation was tiny for now, but give it a few years and it would be packed with all kinds of fruits. Then he heard the word years slip out of Riane's mouth and the shock hit him. She never used to think about the future, but now she could, and that lit up his whole heart. He leaned in and promised her, "If you ever need anything, you can count on me. I'll be right here." Then he suddenly heard other goblins struggling with that strange, unknown man, because the moment he showed up, he just kept roaming around, staring at everyone like he owned the place. The goblin demanded the man move somewhere else, grumbling that the stairs made everything feel awkward, then snapped and called him Mappa. And just like that, everyone else jumped on the bandwagon too, calling him Mappa every single chance they got. Mappa snatched the goblin's loot and grabbed everything it had made, and shoved them back like they weren't even worth a second thought. Then the goblin exploded with rage. Then he pushed Mappa to test it firsthand, shoving the hammer straight into his hands. Then Mappa's eyes flared with pure determination. Then Mappa grabbed the task and started crafting the items himself. And man, he looked seriously professional doing it. Heel and the others could tell that Mappa looked like he'd been doing this for ages. And when Mappa started hammering that hot iron at full speed, they stared in awe, and then Mappa shot ahead to finish those ice axes in a flash. And it came out so clean and graceful, like a masterpiece carved from pure art. He couldn't wait to swing the one pickaxe Mappa forged and see if it would outshine all the usual ones, because he couldn't shake the worry that his pickaxes might not be strong enough to get the job done. Once he used them side by side to dig in that cave, every doubt that haunted him got blown to dust. The pickaxe map I cooked up was way tougher than any I'd made before, even though I used the same iron. Then he spotted the spot where he'd stashed the dragonstone, but no matter how sure he was, it was gone, nowhere to be found. And then he spotted a weird, unexpected mark right on the hole in the ground. He figured the rocky shadows were hiding bones, then the truth hit him. Mappa was brought back to life by the dragon stone. He couldn't stop smiling. He just added another rock-solid comrade to his side. And with Mappa backing them up, they blasted through the coast of the island and leveled it fast. And on top of all that, they tore the ship apart and rebuilt it piece by piece, making real progress fast. Then they jumped into even bigger projects. Soon, he stumbled on even more slimes, tamed them on the spot, and put them to work hauling rocks for transportation. Everything was going great, until the turtle stones started acting weird. He noticed they were running out fast, like there were way fewer turtle stones than before. Rihanna assured him she was totally fine with the turtle stones she already had, but those 10 years they gave her felt way too short for a girl who was barely old enough to start living. Then it hit him. Helping her wasn't the only reason he'd been pushing this whole time. But deep down, he honestly wanted Rihanna to stay with him longer. He wanted to dig deeper, grow the island with her, and keep building together. But then, bam, he burst into the massive room hiding behind the cave he'd just carved. He thought this island was empty as a grave, but it felt like this inhabited island had long ago been caught in the aftermath of something wild that changed everything. He zeroed in on the room, pushed the door open, and started grabbing every single thing he could get his hands on. He stumbled on a heart stone that could power the core of an artificial organism, and suddenly he could forge dolls with it. He calls out now, dragging in even more comrades to fight beside him. Then he rushed to the center of the room and snatched up the golden stone. This changed stone was the key, one stone that could force a monster's evolution. Turns out that changed stone didn't just swap a monster's form, it could twist it into a totally new species, and even pass along the age and personality of that new creature. And yeah, that freaked him out at first. Then it hit him, an idea sparked in his head, and soon after, he decided to lay it all out with Varys, Rihanna, and Elvin. Varys leaned in and swore she knew that stone from the moment it was named in their legends. And he fired off a question to Heel, asking if he knew any species that looked just like goblins. He suddenly remembered the hobgoblins and the leaf goblins. Then Varys leaned in and laid it out. Those goblins weren't always like this. Power-hungry ones clawed their way into becoming hobgoblins, while the ones desperate to vanish deep in the forest twisted into leaf goblins. And yeah, they even used the same change stone to make it happen. And once he's seen these examples, he'll finally understand what evolving really means. Varys stared at the stone for the first time, stunned, and he'll finally remember what the Cave King's crest warned him earlier, that the stone could evolve and breathe new life into his lifespan. He leaned in and asked, "Want to try it?" And Elvin admitted he was curious, but he still backed off, because he liked his body exactly the way it was. Then Rihanna cut in, saying she wanted to try it and learn magic that could help heal people. But her nerves screamed, "What if I mess this up?" Because this was too precious to risk. Elvin and Varys were totally on board with that plan, and Heel jumped in too. He told her that if she could use magic, it would make everything way easier. And above everything else, he begged for her to live, longer than fate ever planned. His words lit a spark in her, pushing her to finally decide she had to evolve. He nodded, then handed her the change stone right there, like it was the key to everything. She clutched it to her chest, shut her eyes tight, and braced herself, starting to wish he could stick with Heel for as long as possible. As she pictured the species she wanted to steal, the stone flared brighter and with that blinding glow lighting up everything, everyone had to shut their eyes. Seconds later, they watched Rihanna transform into an adorable teenage girl right before their eyes. She stared at her new look and froze in shock, but Mappa was the most shocked. He froze and gaped until a nosebleed started flowing from seeing that stunning girl completely naked. Surprisingly, after just a few hours, he finally jolts awake. He couldn't even tell when his eyes shut, and then boom, he realized how it all went down when Rihanna finally leveled up and evolved. He jolted awake to Rihanna hovering over him, her lap cradling his head, and she shot him a reassuring look. "I'm right here. I've got you." Seeing her hit him like a wave, his cool vanished, and panic flustered his whole face. He shot up right away, but her new look still threw him off. She grabbed his attention and told him to lie down, since he'd suddenly collapsed without warning. It all kicked off when he jumped in front of Renaa to shield her from Mappa's nosebleed. Then it happened. He told her he was okay now, just wiped out from earlier, then asked how long he'd been out and how Mappa was doing. She leaned in and told him, "Mappa's asleep too." Then he asked her straight up if she was okay too, because nobody ever thought she'd suddenly look human. She went quiet for a full minute, then finally told him the truth. She didn't actually miss the version of herself she used to be. Cursed since she was a kid, her body slowly rotted into weakness year after year, and her beautiful sisters cruelly laughed at her, until her parents tried to help, then turned around and started shunning her too. That's why, the moment she changed and stared into the mirror, she became exactly the stunning version of herself she'd been dreaming of. She rushed to apologize to Heel for wasting a stone that rare on a selfish wish. He told her she didn't have to say that, because since the day he arrived on this island, he'd already changed. So yeah, she totally got to start fresh and build a whole new life for herself too. It would have been such a tragedy if she ended up trapped in a body she couldn't stand. She smiled, thanked him for being wildly generous, and for truly understanding her. And since he gave her a brand new body and a fresh life, she swore she'd give him everything she had. He clutched her hands, scrambling for the right words. Yet, then they realized Mappa was standing right behind them, silently watching as everything spiraled out of control. Which rocked them both. Rihanna's brand new transformation hit the Belden tribe like a thunderclap. Then she spun her own clothes from taran and other silk, turning thread into something she could wear right away. She leaned in and demanded, "So, what were you people seeing in me?" And then, everyone who didn't witness her changing couldn't wrap their heads around it, because somehow, it all happened to her overnight. But the moment they saw Renaa grinding like crazy, they knew it was really her, and before long, they warmed up to her for real. She threw herself into studying magic and martial arts with her. Chasing endless ambitions after that brand new life finally set him free. She heard it all, and no matter what she tried next, nothing stopped the truth from following her. And Heel grinned like crazy, thrilled to watch her genuinely enjoy her makeover. Varys swooped in and demanded, "What in the world are you thinking?" He even admitted he wasn't staring at Rihanna's legs at all. Ferris took that claim as it was, and said he figured Heel would spot Rihanna's crest, the farmer's thing. She carried the farmer's crest that made crops explode with life, so Heel knew entrusting the plantation to Rihanna was the right move. Varys blinked in shock when I told him goblins could even wear a crest, and he admitted, yeah, it was totally possible. He'll apologize if that sounded rude, because he'd learned something wild. Only humans can have crests. Varys then pulled out his very own crest for him to see. The Sorcery King had an insane crest all its own. He knew exactly how terrifying that power could become, but Varys said he couldn't touch it because he had zero magic to back it up. He could guide Rihanna to study magic with the power of his crest, because even if he couldn't use it himself, he still held the key to helping her. Varys then snapped that it was time to take the land back from the sea, grow the island's territory, and boost their crops like never before. He decided he should carve out even bigger spaces where kids could run wild and play. Varys said he'd need more raw materials, and before he could finish, Heald cut in, saying he had an idea, then ordering Varys to hand it over to him. He realized he could use the workshop even when he wasn't inside the cave, so he used it to shape the raw materials into blocks and drop them exactly where he'd planned. Then he blasted water magic and ripped the seawater away from around them, leaving them exposed. He packed it tight with rock and gravel, then sprinkled the whole surface with cage spider dirt. He figured this was enough for now, and somehow, with nothing but workshop scraps, he built a massive space. Then Rihanna, Varys, and Elvin rushed in to inspect it. Then the kids trailed right behind them, grinning the whole way, and when they finally got what they wanted, they thanked Heelford with real excitement. He couldn't help it, he was thrilled he could help them, and Rihanna even thanked him, saying she could use that land to grow amazing crops of her own. He couldn't wait for it either. Then bam, a massive bird swooped in out of nowhere and attacked Mappa, and before he could react, it swallowed him whole. And right when the goblins saw it, panic hit fast, because this was Killer Bird, the hunter that always swings in with a whole flock. He barked at everyone to scramble back into the cave. Then they all bolted back, until one kid ate the ground and went down hard. Making it even harder on them, Fola lunged to help the kid, while his magic kept swatting the birds out of the way. Then out of nowhere, a wild bird came barreling straight at Fuller, and just when it looked hopeless, the elven strike chopped the bird's neck clean off at the last second. He somehow saved his daughter, shoved her out and barked, "Get out of here, next." Next, he swung his blade and chopped the heads off multiple killer birds, proving the real muscle of a Belden tribe general goblin. He decided to team up with the elves and lend him a hand. Then out of nowhere, a second bird came barreling in from behind them. Rihanna hurled up her shield magic and stopped it cold. She fired him a command to do whatever he needed to do. With her help, he finally locked in and went all out against the killer birds. He told Elven to move with total caution, aim only for the birds' heads, because they didn't have a clue which one had the mapper hidden inside. Varys leaned in and ordered them to head straight for the entrance, and he finally decided to go all in on protecting it. Then it hit him, he remembered the heart stone, so he snapped together a brutal plan, craft a giant rock golem with the stones he'd gathered and seal the heart stone inside it, and that monster tore through the birds, smashing the entrances with terrifying ease. As the bird that swallowed Mappa gagged and spit him back out, and a slime snared him at the last second. Now they didn't have to stress about accidentally landing the wrong Mappa anymore. And he ordered Elvin to grab them right now. Elvin swung his axes, and the blades were lashed tight with ropes spun from Tarrant silk, to grab and bind dozens of killer birds all at once. The roll hit like a truck, and next thing you know, he's coming in, ready to blow everything open, to snatch those birds by freezing them solid with blizzard magic. He snapped up every tied-up victim in a single instant, freezing them all at once. And right after that, the other killer birds got hit with the same instant fate. The other goblins erupted into cheers, celebrating their victory like it was pure glory. And Elvin's heart soared when he saw his boss absolutely crush it in the fight. Rihanna rushed in to patch him up and blurted, "Are you hurt?" And he finally confessed that, at first, fear hit him hard, but she was right here with him now, and it hit him like a wave of relief. Heel's legs were trembling so hard it looked like the ground might crack. This was his very first showdown with the monsters. And Varys burst in, beaming, relieved to find that they were all right. And the rest echoed the same feeling, like a wave of relief, because he was honestly proud he'd fought his way all this distance from where he started. Pride surged through him as he realized he could actually become a real feudal lord, and once they headed back to the caves, he grilled Rhianna on the way, could they eat killer birds? She grinned and said yes, they were edible and way tastier after roasting. Later that night, they threw an unbelievable feast for everyone, like nobody had ever seen anything like it before. He took a deep breath and bit into monster meat for the very first time. And man, that thing was dangerously tasty, absolutely amazing. Rihanna lit up when she saw he enjoyed it, then told him to take a spin on Soul next too. And yeah, it tasted just as good. She took a bite, and the flavor of the meat hit her as weirdly off. She told him the killer birds were wild. Every bite of their meat tasted totally different, depending on which part he snatched. He sensed killer birds were about to strike, but he saw a chance to turn them into a steady food source, so he ordered the golem to keep watch for them. Varys breathed easier, because those killer birds never went near prey bigger than they were. Varys ordered a guard unit, demanding walls and watchtowers to shield the fields from the ocean's salt, then handed the stonework to Heel, while Heel told Varys to handle the whole master plan. He caught a girl staring at him, but his mind went blank. He couldn't remember her name. But he couldn't ignore it, she was Elvin's daughter. He even told her name herself, after he was the one who gave it to her in the first place. It was Fuller. She leaned in and demanded, "Why are you so ridiculously strong?" He told her it was all because of the magic stones he'd scored, thanks to mining. Fuller practically burst with excitement when she heard they had stones like that here, and she immediately asked if she could dig too. Rihanna then leaned in and told Fuller she had to use a change stone to evolve, so she could finally unleash magic. Fuller chose to evolve next, but it was impossible, because he had nothing inside him to evolve with. The elves finally showed up, then they smashed Fuller in the face for messing with Heel, and snapped at her to stop talking rudely to Heel. The elf woman apologized on Elvin's behalf, while Heel instantly clocked the uncanny resemblance between father and daughter. He told Fuller she could use the change stone, if she tracked one down on her own. The second she heard that, her excitement exploded, and she immediately chose to join up with Heel and mining. She swore she'd be right there, ready to help Heel out. And man, he felt downright relieved. Now they had more hands digging into the mines. Then he slammed 800 magic stones into the ride to supercharge her magic power, and she took the weight of it on her shoulders, determined to make it even better with everything she had. Elven told her, if you want this to work, you've got to eat right, and you need to start soon. As the day wrapped up, Heel finally reclaimed that lost land, and celebrated with some seriously tasty food. This day kicked off the very first Memorial Day in the Shield Reef, then the next day followed. He decided to hit the cold freezer, Rihanna's brilliant idea, so they could store mountains of food, and he went and built it huge. And then he caught the cold himself, no kidding. Since they finally had a freezer, spoiled meat stopped being a problem, and she even claimed frozen caves could keep food fresh for over half a year. Mappa finally settled on the door design and had it made by Heel, who caught on instantly, able to tell exactly what shape Mappa wanted. Later on, they also rebuilt the forge, and Mappa and Varys took over the job. While Reen took turns casting freeze on the frozen cave, her confidence kept surging higher with every moment. And thanks to Elvens and Varys, the outer defenses were getting hammered into place. Seeing it all run smoothly gave him the green light to dive back into mining. Again, Fulham admitted she couldn't believe it. Everything ran smooth as butter, and not a single bad thing happened. She couldn't believe it, how the Cave King pulled off all of this without even needing a single cave. She told him they had to add ventilation, because letting dust just pile up and hang in their lungs was pure danger. If they piled up coal gases inside, it would poison the whole group, or even blow the cave apart, no question. She knew there was a way to vent the air with a device that pushed it outside, so she decided to have Mappa build it later. Fuller's words hit hard, and she confessed that she'd been working in mines since she was little. Because she carried the crest of a miner, he felt his nerves settle, like it was a sign that everything would be okay, and let her speak up freely if she spotted anything else that needed changing. She was seasoned, sharp as a blade. No wonder her instincts found the ores so fast. And yeah, she was his biggest rival, right up there with Terran. Then Fuller leaned in and demanded to know if Heel had a father. He shot back that yeah, he did have one, and it absolutely battered him too. Remember this, he was terrified of his father too, just like his brothers. And even after he finally gained incredible power, his family still carried boundless strength that dwarfed his own. Then he leaned in and asked Fuller if she wanted to be stronger than her father, like the answer was staring them right in the face. Then Fuller slammed into a hollow cave, stared into the dark, and sprinted inside right away to see what was waiting for her. It was a massive stone room, and she asked if the new stone was kept in a place just as cold and huge as this one. He nodded in agreement, and she practically buzzed with excitement as she hurried to look around even more. Then one of the statues lurched to life, and fire magic erupted from its hands. He'll snap up a shield just in time to save himself in Fuller. He leaned in and asked, "Hey, are you okay?" Then he realized the statues were basically golems, built to soak up power, even magic. Then the golems kept swarming him, and a few of them even raised swords to cut him down. They boxed him in from every side, yet he already had a plan brewing, ready to break their trap. He whipped up wind magic to forge savage storms and pulled it, to send the golems crashing out of the sky. Fuller was fine, and she shot a quick apology for barreling ahead without thinking. He definitely didn't see golems like these coming at all. He shot Shell a signal, and Shell passed it on, freezing everyone and shutting down the mining. Then Fuller spotted a stone and snapped, "Heel, tell me, is this a golden change stone?" But it turned out to be a sorcery stone that could whip up dolls out of pure magic. She stared at it, heart dropping. Turns out it wasn't a change stone after all. Then Mappa burst out of nowhere, and her world jolted with a sudden start. Mappa ripped his sword out of the wreckage. Golems grinned and bounded back up to the surface. Fuller couldn't stop staring and wondered how long Mappa was really going to stay naked, then asked if all humans were like that. Mappa shot back that it wasn't, but Fuller could tell he was way more excited than usual. He lunged for the sword from that other golem, but no matter how hard he strained, the sword just wouldn't move, even if he and Fuller threw everything they had at it together. He lunged for the sword, but the crest flashed its warning. No way was he taking it. He could only grab minerals and mined items, nothing else. He slammed a pickaxe down and shattered the sword, but it didn't budge. He kept hammering at the sword, trying to break it, and still nothing. After countless tries, he finally broke through. He couldn't stop wondering what kind of metal that sword was forged from. Turns out it was orichalcum, lighter than metal, tougher than steel, and perfect for supercharging magic enchantments. Then he dove deeper into his inventory, and that's when he spotted something that made his jaw drop. Back in the main cave, Elven was straining with everything he had, trying to hoist the sword Mappa had hauled back. Soon, Heel came rushing back and demanded, "What the heck is going on here?" Reel leaned in and told him all about that cursed sword, then explained how everyone around them kept straining to lift it. He warned them this won't be easy. The sword's forged from 300 orichalcum. Full tried to explain to his father that it just wasn't possible. But Elven didn't quit, he kept grinding, and finally he managed to lift the blade seemed to thank him for driving power into the great warrior crest. Still, he couldn't hold it up for long. His grip gave out and the thing dropped hard. Heil rushed up to him, blasted recovery magic, and sealed the wound on the spot. Good thing it wasn't too serious. Fuller didn't waste a second. He surged forward and wrapped his arms around her father. She was freaking out for him and snapped, "You idiot," because making her worry like that was unforgivable. He swallowed his pride, apologized to her, and swore, starting right now, he'd be way more careful. Meanwhile, Mappa breezed through it, hauling that massive sword like it was nothing. He slammed the sword into the furnace, like he was feeding it heat and fury. Mappa was born from a legendary dwarf race, so he hunted rare minerals like treasure. Then, with jaw-dropping strength, secret techniques, and a noble soul, he began forging something extraordinary out of orichalcum. Mappa then went and forged something, ready to step in and heal. He handed them the forged item, and it looked like Mappa cooked it up just for him. The pickaxe was forged from orichalcum, and right after that, Mappa kept cranking out even more orichalcum tools, and for some reason, he insisted on staying completely naked while he did it. The very next day, Elven was thrown into a brutal fight, but when he swung his axe, it just refused to work against whatever he faced. Then Elven took it as a personal challenge and charged the monster straight on, face to face. Meanwhile, deep in the cave, Fuller was sweeping the area, checking every corner like the walls might strike first. And she gave it the thumbs up, because now the air was way cleaner, all thanks to that ventilation hole. He strapped Mappa's spinning blades to his plan, turning them into tidal engines that blasted fresh air in without stopping. But Fuller insisted she only wanted to get back to mining, and he'll back that same idea. But he insisted on waiting a little longer, because they'd been attacked just yesterday. She got up, then headed straight for the forge by herself, while he frantically wrestled with a plan so everyone could mine safely. He decided to forge brand new golems, and this time he wanted them actually right, so he dropped to the ground and started sketching the golem's design right there. He totally got carried away, and ended up crafting a wild design made entirely of orichalcum, complete with swords, bow guns, magic stones, and basically everything you could want. His grin suddenly flipped into something hilarious, and before he knew it, Rihanna showed up like, "What are you up to?" He jolted when she popped up out of nowhere, and she rushed out an apology just to knock his focus off what he was working on. She leaned in and asked if he had a moment to spare, and he quickly nodded back, "Yeah, sure." So she dragged him along with her, and honestly, she hardly ever talks like this. She whispered for him to keep trailing her in silence, and together they headed straight for her farm. And then he froze in shock when he realized she was leading him straight to the plantations. Turns out this place was stacked with apples and grapes, then even lemon and palm trees showed up too. He even praised Rihanna for being such a great orchid, and she lit up and thanked him for the compliment. But she insisted they still wouldn't have enough for everyone, and then she dropped her plan. Then she locked in her focus and drove a single punch straight into the coconut tree. A coconut plummeted from the tree, then she sprang into the air and she shattered their momentum with bone-cracking kicks, and every strike landed clean, because she trained those skills in martial arts under General Elven. He was completely stunned to catch this wild side of her as she grabbed the lemons, squeezed every drop, and spun it into coconut juice. She tossed it in and stirred in water, then figured they could savor it in moderation. He couldn't believe the power she had, and then he took a sip of the juice she just whipped up. He took one sip and got completely hooked, because that juice was packed with. It hit with the perfect burst of sweet refreshment and a sharp, punchy tang. And honestly, it was even better than the juice he'd had earlier. Then the shore suddenly roared with strange sounds. That was Elven's. She'd barely finished fighting the shell monster. It was a Satan's shell he grabbed earlier, and he brought it down from the back of the island. Elven warned everyone, if you spot one, tread carefully, and Varys told the others they shouldn't try that move. Elven could force them open easily, because he was just that powerful. Varys leaned in and pulled something out of the shell, and then he flinched when he heard, "What is it?" Mappa barely had time to taste it before the numbing liquid from Satan's shell hit, paralyzing him, and the shell poured it onto its prey. Varys laughed like it was a joke, but he was warning you, one little poison could turn into something lethal fast. He swore it was just a joke, and then admitted you could totally use it to harvest purple dye. After that, he hardened his domain, because if killer birds, Satan shells, and ruthless domains tried to breach it, they were going to regret it. He forged 14 brand new golems, and christened each one with a number, 1 through 14. Numbers 6 through 15 dug up magic stones, while the remaining 4 focused on defensive magic, and the last 2 trained in one of the 4 elemental attributes. Then the Watcher slammed the bell of danger, and everyone snapped to attention as more Satan shells came raining in. They were storming in through the wall's unfinished section, right where the defenses still hadn't been finished yet. With 50 of them charging in, they couldn't stop wondering if they'd survive long enough to handle them all. Hyle leaned in and interrogated Varys. So what's your real weakness? He told him straight up that the Satan shells couldn't take a lightning strike. He told Elvin to hand it over to him because he couldn't wait to put his brand new golems to the test. Elvin nodded and told him, let Hyle call me the second anything goes wrong. Rihanna asked him if she could tag along too, because she already knew lightning magic. Hyle shouted golem number 1, and they teamed up with 6, 7 and 14, 15. He marched straight into battle, ready to crush the Satan shells. Shells slammed up onto the walls, hitting the golems hard while they fought back as they attacked. He ordered 6 and 7 to stand guard and keep them safe with shield spells. Then Rihanna unleashed a lightning spell and wiped them out in the blink of an eye. While Elvin and Varys stared at the battle raging against the Satan shells, the golems rolled in like living mobile forts, built to take a beating with insane endurance. Next, Hyle commanded 14 and 15 to unleash lightning attacks on them. The shells shuddered under the pressure, dumping their liquids to keep moving. But golems popped up to shield them effortlessly, and the same. Lightning cracked across the battlefield as the shells kept getting fired right to the very end. Elvin's face lit up as he watched the golems do their job flawlessly, guarding Hyles from that numbing liquid. And this whole ordeal ended way faster than he ever would have expected. The golems blasted powerful magic the whole fight, and he pumped everyone's spirits, especially Rihanna, for jumping in to help. After the chaos, a few shells still clung on, refusing to disappear, and blasted numbing liquid into his heel from right behind him. Rihanna clocked it at the last second and lunged in front of him to shield him from the danger. Elvin tore through that shell, and then he realized Rihanna was right on him, dousing him with a cold, numbing liquid. Her whole body went numb, and she couldn't move a single inch. Then he healed her on the spot. She thanked him with real gratitude. And then he said she was totally sticky now, and he figured she'd feel gross from it, so he hurried off to grab her some water fast. As he headed down the road, he spotted a pair of them tucked inside a shell. And it was insanely rare to spot one in Satan's shells, because man, it was absolutely beautiful. And then Hyle finally snapped. He decided to give Rihanna a shot because he was convinced that duo would suit her perfectly. While she got completely flustered by it and dashed back she shoved the pearl into his hands, then bolted like the devil was chasing her. He realized he wasn't ready to hand it over to her, so he held it back for now. The next day, while he was mining, he finally caught a break and spent it hanging out with Fuller and Shell. But Foll wouldn't slow down. He kept digging deeper, refusing to rest just yet. He reminded her to eat, and she waved him off, saying she'd never pull a stunt like skipping a meal prepared by a princess. He ditched golem number 9 right there as a safety net, ready to ring the bell if anything went wrong. With golem's protection backing them up, they kicked off the mining again. Then he realized Fuller had more drive than anyone else, and right after that, they headed to Rihanna to dig into a meal. Today's meal came straight with the Satan Shells course, and zero mercy. So irresistible that they couldn't help themselves, and went straight for it. Turns out Satan's shells had buried their nests right near them. So every day they had fresh dyes, plenty of food, and those tough shells that could actually take a hit. But the wild currents circling the shield reef, if it got any closer, that monster's body would have crushed them. After that, they were checking out Tyrion's purple suit. It was the noble's prized secret, and he took one look at it and decided to craft fancy outfits for them. Then Elvin strode in, wearing a face full of seriousness. Then he demanded that Hyle follow him to the reclaimed land. After he rushed there to find out what happened, he spotted exactly what was going on. They hauled in the dead orc they'd found pinned in the embankment. He clocked that mark on the orc's hands, the one that belonged to the same tribe that raided their home, smashed it to pieces, and left it burning in ashes. The other goblins snapped with rage and started kicking its corpse, because their own kind had dragged them into that miserable state in the first place. He stepped in to stop them, but they ignored him completely. He realized he had no right to stop them, not when their tribes were wiped out. Then Princess Rhys slammed her hand down and stopped everyone in their tracks, and when she saw those goblins kicking a dead person, fury lit up her, because it was a disgrace that shamed the pride of their whole tribe. The goblins snapped that it was all because these orcs, these monsters, were the reason their tribes got wiped out, and it wasn't even the only reason. But they also paraded their king's corpse to send a brutal message. But still, she refused to let them carry on like those orcs. She said Hyle gets to choose exactly how they're handling this. She shot him an apology, making it crystal clear it was all her fault for the trouble. And he felt the same way she'd said, so he couldn't help but feel grateful for her help. He decided to take the charge himself, because if he's chief right now, he's stepping in. He could tell these people were seething, angry, fed up, and desperate to blow off steam. But he wouldn't let them do something so humiliating, like kicking a dead person. Then he lowered his head, demanded everyone's attention, and told them to swallow their rage. Everyone was crushed with shame, realizing their mess forced their boss to bow his head. Elven and Varys grabbed him right away and demanded he lift his head. Then Hel ordered Varys to take charge of burying the dead orcs. Then it didn't take long for him to realize this body wasn't the only one out there, but the ocean overflowed with dead bodies, floating on the surface in every direction. They ripped the dead bodies out, piling them up. But there were also kobolds, goblins' bitter rivals, who fought side by side with the orcs too. He'll ask whether orcs and kobolds ever clashed here, but even that won't explain why they're stuck out in this remote wilderness. Elven showed up and warned him something was seriously off, because every corpse's battle wounds looked absolutely monstrous. There were scars that no axe or sword could ever carve. He swore it had to be fangs, judging by the wounds, but the bite was so massive he'd never seen anything like it. Even if you counted the orcs one by one, half of their bodies were gone. He demanded, "So you're saying Elven meant we got attacked by something else?" Elven couldn't pin it down, so he told everyone to tighten their defenses and keep a sharp eye on the arm ships, while even the Cave King couldn't figure it out either. Then he handpicked Varys for the burials, and left Elven holding the line, guarding the defenses. Meanwhile, Rihanna and he scoured the area for anything they could grab, because survival meant using every chance they had. This whole place looked wrecked, like everything had fallen apart. Then he caught a sound, so he fired the question at Rihanna, "Is that you?" And the moment he asked, then you realize the voice isn't coming from a person at all, it's spilling out of a treasure chest. He leaned in, snapped his pick into place, and cracked the chest lock with pure lockpick skills. And the moment the box popped open, something shot out of it in a flash. He grabbed it and cradled it in his hands, then realized with a jolt it was a puppy. And the puppy immediately started sprinting all over him. He leaned in and asked Rihanna, "So what do I do right here?" But before he could blink, the puppy peed on his clothes, and pure embarrassment hit him hard, while Rihanna laughed like it was the funniest thing ever, and promised she'd wash his clothes. Then he snapped his gaze to the adorable little puppy. Rihanna just wanted everyone to see the truth, that a baby kobold wasn't guilty of a single thing. So she figured the whole tribe had to get it, because they all needed to pitch in and care for the baby kobold too. Tomorrow he's back to mining, digging up even more minerals and pulling out the riches. He couldn't stop raving about the fresh special orichalcum ice axe mapper made for him. He was bracing for a showdown out on the coastal waters, but he had zero answers for what that meant. So for now, he decided the smartest move was to keep mining and push forward. He craved more raw materials, because he knew the only way to defend the island he'd been mining was to keep stacking minerals into power. He scooped them up and kept snapping his inventory open to double-check his stash every few moments. He realized the magic stones were coming less and less now, so he grabbed for more because he needed extra to juice up Rihanna's magic power, and he figured he might need those same supplies for Fula and Varys someday too. But for now, he was totally powerless. Then his eyes locked onto a fresh find he'd pulled from the mines, and he couldn't even tell what it was. And even the Cave King crest couldn't tell him a thing, because this wasn't stone at all, it was a seed. And just like that, Fuller showed up to confront him, so he shot back, asking if she came all the way here to mine too. She warned him that the baby kobold was acting up, crying non-stop like it couldn't catch a break, even when Elven was busting out his funniest faces to try and get him to laugh. When it still wouldn't work, even Taran jumped in to make the baby kobold laugh, but the little one just kept sobbing, refusing to stop. Then Fula stormed in and slammed into Elven with a kick, because his face made the baby cry harder. His expressions were scary, not funny. Money, Elven told her he'd done the same thing just to make her laugh when she was a baby. But Heel also told him, "I'm just trying to scare you, that's it." And Elven immediately welcomed his boss in. And baby Kobold finally spotted that Heel was here. So he rushed straight to him and started messing with Heel right away. Turns out that little baby Kobold wasn't just crying. He'd been hunting for help ever since he woke up from that nap. Rihanna told him that the baby Kobold might start seeing him as its father, and teased him that the pee he'd sprayed on Heel earlier was probably the baby Kobold's way of tagging him. Varys leaned in and said that baby Kobold doesn't just exist, it imprints on whoever comes near. Then he'll corner him and demand to know what he was doing with the chest where they found the baby. Varys leaned in and told him the chest wasn't as deep as they'd believed. Inside it looked way shallower than the outside promised, so Varys figured there was a false bottom in there, and they tried carving it open with an orichalcum knife, but no matter how the bottom was built out of wood, it just wouldn't budge. Hyle recalled that stories like these usually ended with special locks sealing the truth, and he unleashed magic to pry open the secret false bottom. They cheered it worked, and he pulled out the things. Stuffed inside the fake bottom was a stack of 3 books about the history. He dug into the Tybris tribe's history, techniques, and scriptures, and even chased it all down with a single white stone, then learn their secrets from the book's names. He couldn't stop wondering what that stone really was, until his crest finally clued him in. It was the Thought Stone, built to store thoughts. Elvin and Rihanna grilled him about what it was, and Varys just stared like he already knew the whole secret. Then the stone erupted in blinding light, and right then, it came to life and activated. A female kobold's hologram flickered into existence, and he froze. Who was she really? Rihanna tailed her own spotlight, shining right there beside him. Kobold's recording was meant for the ones who could finally crack that chest seal open. She called herself Alhamina, the queen of the Tibris tribe, and then revealed the baby kobold they'd found inside that chest was her brand new newborn. Elvin's rage flared at the Tiberius tribe, but he kept himself locked up. He only listened to the message. As she kept talking, you could tell she didn't have long left. She kept insisting that their ship was getting hunted by the legendary Leviathan. They'd been battered by those earlier orc battles, and now the beast crushed the rest of their strength, because their weapons and magic did nothing, and there was no way out of its grip. She demanded that whoever cracked open the chest become her baby's foster parents. And as the price for saying yes, she swore she'd hand over their 2 strongest warriors, plus the secret books they used to guard the chest, the same forbidden knowledge that outsiders weren't allowed to touch. She begged them to watch over her baby with their whole hearts, and if fate let it, she wanted him to hear her final words someday. A real, heartfelt message. Alhamina, his mom, poured all her love into it, and made it crystal clear how much she adored him. Her smile and her message hit the baby just fine, even if he was still too tiny to grasp what any of it meant. When that last recorded thought snapped shut, everyone froze, wondering what in the world might have happened to those Tiberius. Elvin was furious that they dumped their kid on someone else, and to make it worse, those escorts she bragged about never showed up either. Rihanna snapped at Elvin to stop acting like that, and he immediately rushed to the watchman to spill what was happening. Hyle snapped to the truth. Somehow, they already knew about Tibris. Fula finally told him, again and again, about the brutal brawls between the Tibris and the Belden tribes, sparked for years over who owned those lands. She was crushed by grief, because her brother had paid the ultimate price in that same war. Hyle finally exhaled. Elvin didn't glare at the baby kobold, even after hearing that recorded. Fuller told him with complete certainty that her father would never, ever hate a child. And Varys trailed after him, saying the General Elvin was drowning in guilt for not being able to protect his own son. And yeah, Varys lost his own brother in the war too, but he didn't carry a single grudge against the baby. Hearing them loud and clear, Heel clenched his resolve and decided he'd take over the baby duties from this day on. While that choice instantly lit up everyone else's faces with pure joy. Then he leaned in and asked what they wanted to name the baby, and even in the recorded thought, his name was nowhere to be seen. Rihanna said she might have purposely left the baby unnamed, so whoever found him could look at him and feel like he was theirs. Then he leans in and asks her straight up if she has any name ideas. She stopped for a heartbeat, then leaned in and told him to name the baby Real. He loved that name too, and right then the little cobalt baby got christened Real for good. Even though it wasn't on purpose, the baby still got filed among the tamed ones. And he figured that was the best idea of all, because the baby would be living in caves too. Fuller teased Rihanna for naming the baby by blending bits of her name with Heel's. Rihanna totally panicked when she heard her own comment. Then Varys leaned in and said, "All right, there's something else we need to tackle right now," and it wasn't good news. They finally realized what the Mark of Giants really does. Half their body gets blasted away, yet the rest stays immune to weapons. They all call it the massive, legendary beast, Leviathan. After that incident finally faded, MAPPA cracked open his new invention and shoved it at Heel like, "Try it, hit it with your magic." And right then he demanded, "Are you sure?" Then once it was confirmed, he slammed it with a scorching flame magic blast. The brand new invention turned out to be a shield, wielded by a golem like it was made for war. Turns out it was way stronger than shield magic. So strong he just knew he could count on it. He stared at it, then leaned over and demanded, "What are you guys doing?" Garrison stepped in after another jaw-dropping MAPPA masterpiece, giving them a fortress strong enough to defend the island, even from the biggest monsters imaginable. Heel was still spooked by that beast, so he grilled Varys. Was Leviathan really just a mythical monster? Elvin admitted he didn't buy the legend either. But when Queen Alhemino's squad of elite soldiers finally clashed with that monster and got wiped out, their fears suddenly made perfect sense. Then he'll drive Real's bark into line, and when he spins back too. He was perched way up on the towering construction logs. Elvin realized he was trapped and shot into action, rushing over to save him right away. Even as he tumbled downward mid-chaos, he still pulled off the rescue, saving Real. Rhianna burst with relief when she saw Real and General Elvin were both okay. Elvin couldn't stop thinking that Real might be out in the fields, with everyone right now. She told him straight up that Real was pure fire out there, digging like a machine, but he kept slipping around and pacing non-stop, and she just couldn't keep up. Varys swore that the Cobalt kids grow up at lightning speed, and soon Riel would be standing on two legs too. Heel was caught off guard by it, but then it hit him. Those memories from the fields came rushing back. About that seed he'd found earlier, he yanked it out, stared at it, and grilled Varys, asking if he knew what it was. Varys had no idea which seat he was supposed to take, but Rihanna shot up and claimed it was the Yggdrasil seed. Heel, Varys, and even Rhaena herself were stunned, like the whole room just froze. She couldn't even explain how she knew. She just said it, slipped out of her mouth like she had no control. And the reason hit hard. Her farmer's crest revealed secrets of every plant that ever grew. Varys then leaned in and admitted he actually knew about Yggdrasil. It was this colossal tree that blessed every living thing on the land, and people only talked about it in whispers and old legends. Just like the changed stone that came right after that. Heel sprinted around the island, hunting for the perfect spot to start mining, and he carved out a path because this was the perfect opening to stake their claim in a brand new field, because he already had more than enough materials to make it happen. Then he ordered the spiders to haul themselves over for the retrieval, because his collecting power only worked inside the cave, and now he desperately needed help to scrape away the dirt. After that, he threw himself into the work and kept rebuilding the place for a while. That very same evening, he finished carving out fresh reclaimed land for them, then stormed straight to the center of it to plant the Yggdrasil seed. Rihanna strolled over and began planting flowers with her own hands. She scattered those seeds everywhere too, straight from her hometown, and he couldn't help thinking it would be absolutely perfect. Then Mappa burst onto the scene out of nowhere, right as Yggdrasil planted itself. Rihanna blinked, and there it was, the Yggdrasil seed already sprouting like it was way too fast. He asked both of them if they'd ever used the Sunstone, but neither of them had a thing to do with it. So he decided, all right, let's use the Sunstone right now. And the moment she used it on the plant, it shot up in seconds, bursting into a full-blown tree before her eyes. He had no doubt the Sunstone was pure magic, but then the tree kept surging upward, growing at a mind-blowing, gigantic pace. He quizzed Rihanna, asking if she was truly certain she only used one Sunstone, and she nodded, fully agreeing. And then it hit them. This much growth wasn't safe to stand near that tree anymore. They burst into a run and shot off a few steps away from the tree right away. Mid-run, Mappa stumbled hard and went down. Then the tree swallowed him from every angle, leaving nothing uncovered. And as it kept swelling, Rihanna and Heel barely dodged out, scraping together enough distance to reach safety. Soon, the tree shot up until it was huge, big enough to be seen from the other reclaimed land, which sat on the far side of the island, right there in plain sight of Elven and Varys. Rihanna and Heel gasped, because the tree wasn't just huge, it was massive all on its own, proving why they called it the legendary tree, Yggdrasil. After that, Heel's mind snapped back to an old memory, back when a tiny monster was getting bullied again and again by a bunch of boys. They kept raining attacks on the poor soul while it sat there chained up tight. They'd slam into it the moment they had time to hang around, attacking without wasting a second. Their boss was Orin, and he made them drill their magic attack over and over, laser-focused on that tiny target. Even if they were all elite mages from that top-tier academy, they made sure they didn't finish the monster off, so they chipped away at it here and there, over and over, until it couldn't ignore the damage. Even though Heel used to fear them, that same dread still haunted him, which is why he couldn't bring himself to strike back. So he waited once, and once they were done, they came back, right back to the academy. Back when he first showed up, the monster was already there, and turns out he'd even named it Lopes himself. He admitted he'd been tending to Lopes every single day, but now he's crushed. His healing magic simply wasn't strong enough to save Lopes this time. As time dragged on, Lopes' wound only worsened until it was beyond saving, and he still couldn't break free of his shackles. He could already feel it. At this rate, Lopes was going to die. So he stuck right by his side until Oran came back with his goons, and Oran demanded, "What are you doing here, Heel, standing in front of Lopes?" He'll snap his mouth open to beg Orin to shut this down. Just let Lopes go. Orin hated that, yanked off his glove and wham, slapped Heel with it. Orin hated watching Heel crawl to him, begging to spare Lopes even though he was royalty. So Orin snapped and got furious. He demanded Heel move aside, spit out that he was nothing but a powerless weakling, then warned he'd turn, until Heel crumbled to ashes, along with his lobes. He knew all he could do was drop to his knees and beg for Lopes' life. So he kept begging Orin over and over, just trying to get him to listen. Orin's patience snapped as he watched his pathetic begging, and wanted nothing to do with it. Then he told Heel, "Do whatever you want, go all in," and the moment landed like a challenge. Heel couldn't believe Oran flipped his opinion, but then Oran snapped that this training was getting boring, and he was done fighting those monsters. He grinned the second he heard that. Then Oren dragged him along and ordered him to rip the shackles off Lopes. He told Heel he could do whatever he wanted, and that meant if he wanted Lopes out, he had every right to make it happen. But he couldn't let a monster run wild in the capital, so if Lopes ever came back in front of him, he'd take it out in seconds, and Oren handed Heel the next few seconds to do exactly what he wanted. Oran tried to imagine freeing them, but he knew deep down it wouldn't happen, so he ripped into counting backward from 10, starting immediately. As the numbers keep shrinking, he'll push himself to the limit and race to save the Lobes. He shattered the shackles, yet he kept stabbing at the restraints with those picks, only for it to do nothing. Lopez suddenly realized, too late, that death was barreling toward him. Lopez flashed a grin as the count finally finished. In the very next second, Lopez was nothing but ashes. He crumpled into despair, watching Lopes die right in front of his eyes. Oren snapped that he was awful for letting his friend die like that, but he already knew the ugly truth. There was nothing he could do to save Lopes in the first place. He lunged to punch Oren, but his shield slammed him back every time. He couldn't even get close. Hail exploded at Oren, glaring through tears as he wailed in grief over Lopes. Oran then made Heel understand, crystal clear, that someone as weak as him. He couldn't even dream of getting to someone as powerful as him. Just a wild look in his eyes was enough to crush any threat. Then it hit him, he'd woken up on a bed inside a medical building. Somehow, he hauled himself back again, back to the place where Lopes' remains were still sitting there. The locket hanging from his neck wasn't jewelry at all. It was packed with the ashes of someone he'd held close his whole life. And guilt crushed him for the promise he just couldn't keep. And when he finally told Rihanna, he swore that this was the real him. She shot back, grinning, telling him he wasn't powerless, not even close. She snapped him back to it. How hard he fought for the Belden tribe, with Riel and Lopez right there beside him. And as she listened to his story, tears poured down her face, because he always pushed himself to help others. She threw him an apology because he'd carried so much heartbreak in his past. He couldn't shake the feeling. Why in the world did he tell her this story right now? And finally realized he didn't need answers. He just wanted someone to sit there and listen. Then Rihanna wiped her tears away a few moments later and finally stopped crying. Riel bounded toward them, grinning from ear to ear. The three of them sprang to their feet and marched through the trees surrounding them, heading straight for the crossing ahead. And he couldn't wait, he just knew he had to tell Rihanna his story. Once they pushed through the trees, the fields exploded with flowers. Everywhere in Rihanna's hometown. Riel was bursting with joy, sprinting all over the field like nothing could stop him. Then Rihanna called Heel out and snapped that, yeah, he couldn't undo the regrets he still carried about Lopez. From now on, he can't afford to forget this. When the hard times hit, she and everyone else will always be there for him. He didn't have to face it by himself anymore. His family had grown huge, and he was finally surrounded. And that's why he couldn't help but feel grateful to Rihanna for. Then he leaned on Varys to dig deeper into the Yggdrasil tree, and Varys came back with a shocker. Its leaves could be brewed into tea or turned into healing salve. But if you overdo it, it can wreck you for days, so everyone begs you to be careful. The tree's branches weren't just light for easy lifting. They were sturdy enough to handle orichalcum tools too. They even tried forging orichalcum into ice axe handles, chasing that impossible grip. And just like that, after cranking through tons of tasks, the hours zipped by, bam, dinner time. He told Fully all about what happened at dinner, but she insisted she wasn't tired yet, and he told her she could keep going tomorrow. So she nodded, shoved her pickaxe back where it belonged, and he figured those Yggdrasil branches weren't just scenery, they helped cut the fatigue too. And that tree really did pull blessings out of thin air for everyone. Then it kept the flower fields blooming so beautifully that he couldn't wait to harvest the new crops. He was ecstatic that island life was getting richer by the day, and before he knew it, Riel finally crashed and fell asleep. And he crawled into bed, staring at the ceiling, already buzzing with questions about what the next day would throw at him. When he woke up that morning, he found Riel acting strange, tears pouring down her face. The moment they heard him sniffling, others rushed over to see what broke his heart. And Heel warned that Riel might be trapped in a nightmare, so Rihanna immediately moved in to soothe him, trying to calm his fears. But he was unsettled, then he healed. No. Then he spots a strange mark in Riel's left eye. It turned out to be a crest, and the very next second, the world around them got swallowed by pure white. Riel's mark blasted signals straight into other people's brains, and they caught a glimpse of his memory of the day the Tibris tribe was wiped out. A whole pile of Cobalt workers lay dead, their bodies hacked apart and chopped off the board. And Alhamina was throwing herself at the danger, fighting tooth and nail to keep everyone else safe from the beast. But the monster was way too strong, smashing straight through her barrier like it was nothing. She yanked out her staff with her right hand and went for the shield again. But her desperate move was useless. When the monster surged forward, it swallowed her and took down half the ship with her. Heel froze, one step from dropping to his knees just from staring at the monster, and Rihanna was terrified too. Everyone stared at the same horror, and they all finally understood how deadly the Leviathan really was. And when that image hit, fear snapped into him. His body started sweating immediately. Varys leaned in and said he recognized the crest in Real's eyes, clairvoyance. They claimed this crest was God's all-seeing eye, watching everything, no matter what. So every single thing they just witnessed was actually what Real had already seen before. Right before he said goodbye to his mother, Claire's power surged, and everything changed. Clairvoyance slammed into the whole island, and every single person watched Leviathan's terrifying power unfold before their eyes. Everyone on the island panicked. Would Leviathan strike them? And if it did, what chance did they really have to stop it? They were panicking, so they threw themselves into healing too. He had no idea what he'd do if Leviathan ever showed up here, and if he could actually hold the line and keep all these people safe. Elvin barked out a loud shout, just to make sure everyone heard him. Everyone knock off the sour looks, and remember everything you've survived up to this point. If they teamed up with Heel, there was nothing they couldn't pull off, and he kept everyone's belief in Heel blazing. Then he forced himself to his feet and went straight to them, barking for everyone to calm down and start prepping for the island's possible attack, because even if it wasn't guaranteed, they couldn't afford to shrug off a legendary beast. No matter how hard that power hit, they'd still hold their ground and stop it cold. He asked everyone to give him their strength, and begged for it like the whole world depended on it. And just like that, he snapped into focus and started plotting his very next move. After watching Alamina go toe-to-toe with Leviathan, he finally understood. His magic stood no chance against it. So he grilled Mappa and asked if their orichalcum weapons would actually work. Mappa couldn't shake the doubt, and everyone kept tossing their thoughts into the mix. He gritted his teeth and threw everything he had into finding a way through. So he finally latched onto an idea, head straight for the deepest part inside. The cave where he unearthed the golem, then it hit him. He could use it as a fortress, a place to hide and survive. They just built a freezer right beside it to stash the supplies. But Elvin warned, if that beast hits the island, it could collapse, and push them to retreat right then. Hill said, I've got an idea for that too. And he began carving out a place, built on purpose for something completely different. After that, he couldn't sit still. He wanted to dig up fresh materials, and he rallied the others to talk it through. All this time, the island had surged forward, because fresh discoveries deep underground kept fueling its growth. He couldn't shake the fear that the Shield Reef still hides mysteries. Something could still be sleeping under those caves, ready to rise and take on a monster like Leviathan. Vera tells him there's only one way to know, so this time, he has to bring Riella with him. He figured his clairvoyance could come in clutch, so he hauled Riel out of his bag and hit the road. Right after their search kicked off, Ray nodded off and fell asleep. He didn't do a single thing. He figured Riel would wake up any second, so he slipped off to explore on his own while he waited. And just like that, the whole island banded together, brainstorming every possible way to build a defensive plan against the Leviathan. They didn't have to stress about lumber at all. Yggdrasil just kept the wood supply covered. Soon, the defensive wall's construction roared toward completion, like the city itself was locking its doors. Then Riel jolted awake and started barking like crazy, and my whole gut told me, no way, he's found something. But turns out he wasn't plotting revenge at all. He just had to pee. During the exploration, Riel brooded the whole time, because his clairvoyance let him peer straight through the bedrock like it wasn't even there. He finally realized his skills were solid. When the real world delivered huge piles of ores, he couldn't even track down himself. After a few weeks, Riel was suddenly bursting with energy, and he pointed straight at a spot. And Fulo and Gro were totally baffled, convinced Riel was about to dig right there. But the real problem hit them hard. There wasn't an optimization light anywhere nearby, so he stared at it and worried. Would this even work without it? Riel had to have stumbled on something for sure, he was certain. He knew that if he landed the strike with precision, everything would be fine. But the second he crashed to the ground, the earth yanked him into a hidden cave, and he tumbled in before he could even react. Right under that spot, and there he stumbled on a mountain-sized armor sprawled on the ground, and a sword that was 5 times bigger than his entire body lying beside it. He snapped to the truth. What was trapped in that armor was a golem, and it didn't have a heart stone yet. The whole suit looked like it was forged from orichalcum, and that sword looked like it was forged from pure, unstoppable power. He couldn't wait to get up close and study the sword's material with his own eyes. We slammed it with his pickaxe, and that bone-rattling asterisk clank asterisk blasted through the air with every hit. Rang through the whole cave like thunder, slamming right into Mappa's ears. He'll figure out the hard way. He can't just smash that sword, because its metal is tougher than even orichalcum. Then Mappa slipped in behind him like a ghost, popping out of nowhere. He didn't even realize he'd arrived, Then Mappa spotted the sword and his eyes widened in pure disbelief, stunned by what he was seeing. And he was so over the moon that he started worshipping it like it was sacred. Fuller and Heel were totally baffled. Then they realized Mappa wasn't just excited. Something big was going down. Mappa grabbed that massive sword and hauled it up to the surface all by himself, ready to send it in for processing. Mappa hunched over the forge, grinding and shaping the sword with the help of the other smiths. But Heel sensed something was seriously wrong when the other smiths told him the heating power just wasn't strong enough to melt the sword. Then Rihanna burst in, and the moment she laid eyes on the sword, everything changed. He's going to beg her to help him melt the sword. He fused his magic energy with the furnace's brutal power. They fired off flame magic, cranked the furnace to insane levels, and shoved the sword in immediately. Once the melting finally worked, the molten material burst out. Once the whole batch was turned into raw material, he grabbed a small piece right away to test it. Turns out it was mithril, the toughest metal the gods ever lost, strong enough to kill even the gods, and it could be soaked in magic too. Heel was thrilled he pulled it off, and he wasted no time thanking Reel for helping him track it down. Now he's convinced Mappa will soon forge the mithril into the greatest weapon ever. At last their defensive wall was finished, and the reclaimed land finally started looking like a real fortress. Perfect, just perfect, for what came next. Because they were about to face a legendary beast, they wouldn't stop. Every time a plan failed, they cooked up another way to bring it down. And that's when Shiel's first, and truly greatest, battle finally began. Later that night he finally clocked it. Elvin wasn't pretending anymore. Then Rihanna tiptoed up behind him, pressed a finger to her lips, and told him to shut up, because the next moment was about to get crazy. Reel dropped to his knees, and apologized to Reel for everything he'd said about his mother earlier. He admitted she truly was a terrifying warrior, then told him, "Stay right here, because we're going to wreck the enemy and avenge your mother together." Heel and Rihanna caught it, then they heard him say, "Real." He slid his hand over his eyes, like he couldn't bear to look, which made Scream yelp out in sharp pain, even as everything finally started going right. All that remained was sheer faith in Shiel's power, because if Leviathan ever showed up, that strength had to be enough. After a while, the watchmen slammed the bells, screaming the world was on alert. And he'll tear across the room to find out what it was. Elvin told. He told him they spotted 2 ships out on the ocean, and Varys handed him a telescope, daring him to see it with his own eyes. When he peered through the telescope, the exact same emblem stared back at him. An Orcs tribe hit the Belden tribe before, and it turns out the enemy wasn't new at all. They were the survivors of that same Orcs crew. Elvin seethed, convinced that if they were really coming to strike the island, they sure as hell wouldn't let them take it. Suddenly, something colossal surfaced in the ocean, far off from the ships, and the moment it appeared, the crew charged into an all-out attack. And he'll realize those ships weren't just moving, they were hauling ass to escape something chasing them. Reel started barking like crazy, and Heel finally got what? Something was terribly off. He felt a massive wave of magic energy pouring out of the sea at this very moment. And the moment they laid eyes on what came next, terror slammed into everyone's chest and dropped their jaws. The legendary beast Leviathan erupted from the sea, and its massive black shadow stretched up like it was touching the heavens, so huge it looked unreal, while a terrifying roar ripped through the water, driving the whole sea into total madness. On that ship, the Orcs braced themselves and fought with everything they had to stand their ground against the Leviathan. But their bullets hit it and did nothing, and by this point, defeating this savage beast felt almost impossible. He's desperate to save what's left of the ship, and he won't stop until it's secure. Elvin dashed up and slammed the bell, yanking every single head toward him in an instant. He barked, "Don't just freeze, get your spots right now," and ordered everyone to take the positions they'd been practicing for the last week as the next battle was about to hit. Heel couldn't stop worrying. Elvin was about to haul the burden of saving their enemy, the Orcs. Elvin snapped that he wasn't saving those Orcs at all. He just figured the best move was to strike the Leviathan while it was busy tearing apart their ship. Hyle finally caught on, then barked orders to Fula. He barked the orders, "Everyone, evacuate toward the cave," just like they planned. Fula snapped to attention and warned every fighter, "No matter what happens out there, don't you dare die." Hyle grinned because he trusted his team, and together they charged into the battle, launching a smile-filled war on the beast Leviathan. Varys crept in, then barked instructions on how to build a heavyweight ballista. Gently pulling out its arrow, "It's all systems go, goblins team up, hustle the weapon ballista into position, and get it ready to fire." And that arrow, its head forged from mithril, was the masterpiece Mappa poured his very soul into, strong enough to punch through anything in its path. They loosed their arrows straight at Leviathan, and when Leviathan slammed closer to the ship, they caught the perfect moment and loosed the arrow like a promise. The arrow screamed through the air at breakneck speed, until it was seconds from smashing into the Leviathan. The beast slipped past the arrow like it was nothing. Kyle figured even if the cannonballs couldn't scratch it, a mithril arrow would end it, so Leviathan snapped out of the way. Since that arrow caught its attention, Leviathan locked onto Sheol as its main target, and Heel snapped, telling everyone to load the next arrow before disaster hit. While he grappled the Leviathan with golems, he demanded Rihanna gear up for their next move. He shouted Golem 10 and 11 to freeze with ice magic, then roared for 12 and 13 to get blasted by wind. Together they unleashed a combo attack, Mega Blizzard, straight into the Leviathan. But the Leviathan wouldn't budge. It just kept charging straight at them, cutting through the air at the exact same speed. They finally realized magic just wouldn't work, so they grabbed a whole new plan, which was meant to freeze the water around it. Hyle figured it would be totally fine if they just did it, and left him totally frozen until, to his shock, the Leviathan shattered every last block of ice, and then unleashed a hyper beam as it charged straight at them. He knew things were spiraling fast, so he shouted for Golems 6 and 7, armed with shields, to snap them into the right angle and deflect the attack instead of eating it straight on. As Leviathan barreled in and unleashed a brutal shot from the immense, an earth-shaking beam roared toward the defensive wall as it finally made contact. The beam smashed into the shields. Golems were bracing them with shield magic as the impact tore through. They had to pour every last ounce of strength into it just to keep their ground behind that shield. It unleashed brutal shockwaves that made the entire area quake like it couldn't breathe. Then the shield began to splinter, ripping off tiny pieces from the edges as the damage kept piling on and getting worse. They poured every ounce of strength into it and, by pure luck, shoved the attack aside at the last second, and it blasted the sea wide open with a massive explosion. They weren't fine at all. Leviathan was barely holding on, and he started closing in on them again, right away. Rihanna told Elvin the heavyweight ballista was back in action, and Elvin got ready to unleash it. It was obvious something was off. Leviathan kept charging straight at them, so sure of itself it could dodge that arrow even at this brutal close range. They loosed the arrow, and this time they switched tactics, clean and deadly, which made Leviathan completely miss the arrow. Everyone held their breath, waiting to see what that arrow would do next. The arrow struck the Leviathan dead on, and somehow it didn't just hit, it pierced clean through its body. The Leviathan never even saw the arrow. Rihanna's hiding spell turned it invisible the moment it left the bow. Everyone cheered after they finally landed a clean hit on the beast, but Elvin snapped them to calm down, because they'd only done it once, and that was all they had for now. Then the arrow got yanked into place, wrapped tight with a brutal rope woven from spider silk and steel wires. He barked orders for everyone to push harder. No one lets the Leviathan slip away. He started counting 1 through 5, right as the beast yanked itself closer, and as it slammed into the marked spot, a swarm of hidden sea golems shot up, hands blazing, metal wires snapping tight as they launched their attack, and trapped the beast from every side. But Leviathan fought back with everything it had, and the gears started cracking under the strain. Straight up, they couldn't last. They snapped to Heel to move right now, then loaded a fresh arrow into the heavy ballista, aimed straight for its head to end it for good. Now that the Leviathan was in serious trouble, things burst out of its scales and flooded the area, golems included, spreading everywhere in a flash. Heel's eyes went wide when he realized the ocean was crawling with tons of tiny sea stalkers. They were parasitic monsters that clung to massive sea creatures, and it turns out they'd been hiding under Leviathan's scales the whole time. They still carried a brutal threat all on their own, and the parasites didn't hesitate. They tore Golem number 1's hands clean off. Before they could wreck anything else, Heel barked orders for everyone to blast the sea stalkers out of the sky right away. Turns out there were just too many, so the swarm started clinging to the defensive wall too, and they fought tooth and nail to stop it from letting any of them climb up, while Leviathan kept fighting back at the same time, and that toppled even more golems to the ground. Heel had zero clue this was about to happen, and then out of nowhere, the horns on Leviathan's back swelled larger and became downright terrifying. They could tell it was worse than that ray attack earlier, and whatever came next wasn't going to play nice, not even for a second. Just like they guessed, the horns break free from its body and blast outward in all directions, raining down like a barrage of unstoppable arrows. He'll fire off another shield right away, then bark for everyone to dive behind him. The horns rained down everywhere, each one packed with enough firepower to blow that entire wall apart by itself. They barely clawed their way out alive after the horns' attack, shield up saving them, but in the very next second, panic hit like a death sentence, and they thought it was finally over. But everything they expected crumbled, because the Leviathan's legend was right there, staring them in the face. Then it hit them so fast, they didn't even get a second to understand what was happening. The beast's massive tail slammed down, smashing everything in its path as it tore through the area. Leviathan's tail slammed down with a roar so loud the shockwave echoed all the way into the cave's deepest corners, right where everyone had been evacuated to. Panic surged as the scary sounds hit them, and they prayed it would all be over in the next breath. The kids' fear hit hard. What if they were about to lose? And then, just like that, they were back home again. And their mothers shot back, "Don't stress, Master Heel will fix this, no doubt." Leviathan's tail tore through a massive area like it was erasing reality itself. And luckily, Heel got launched backward like the impact was a cannon blast. He got nailed by the shell at the last second, and somehow still slammed down safely. He shot upright, remembering how Golems 6 and 7 guarded him before, and how he was still standing. Thanks to them. He shouted for the others, but all that answered him was dust choked the air and the silence terrified him. No voices answered when he called out, so he knew they were in deep trouble. While the tiny sea stalkers scrambled up the wall too, and scattered Heel's choices wide open, forcing him into a corner with hardly any options left. He could feel it. If sea stalkers ever slipped onto the island, everything was going to go downhill fast. So he slammed them back with thunderous attacks. He realized his magic was on the edge of running out, and his attacks crumbled, fading like they didn't have the strength they used to. They pinned him into a corner and he snapped to shell, run, and sent them blasting for safety. Then Rihanna showed up, swung into action, and her weapon wiped out dozens of the sea stalkers, surrounding them in the blink of an eye. Heel finally exhaled when he saw Rihanna was safe and unhurt, and she swore not a single thing would ever dare touch her master's heel. He let out a huge breath of relief, bursting with joy that she was finally okay. And Rihanna wanted to make sure he was okay too. Then from right behind them, a storm of arrows crashed down in a furious rain. And when they slammed the sea stalkers, he'll turn the tables in an instant. He looked back and realized those arrows were launched by the others who were fighting to protect Heel. He let out a breath of relief when he saw they were all still standing. Goblins, golems, every last one of them. They surged in together and ambushed the sea stalkers, because the whole crew had one job: follow Princess Rihanna's lead. And they cut down as many sea stalkers as they could. Elvin blurted out an apology to Heel for being late, then instantly felt pure relief, because everyone was okay. Leviathan is tearing into another rampage, and this time it looks even worse. And even those massive golems still couldn't stand a single one of its attacks. The beast still loomed high, and once he caught on, the danger was here, and they stepped into it anyway. Heel barked that it was time to unleash their final strategy, but Rihanna shot back. That's too dangerous, and he knew he had to go through with it even if the odds screamed no, because that plan was his best shot against the Leviathan. Now that it was right there near the shore, Rihanna fretted over him and clutched his hand tight, and handed him every last drop of magic energy she had left, to make sure he finally pulled off the one thing that could stop the Leviathan. Heel stepped up and took matters into his own hands right now. So right when the beast was about to strike again, he clamped his hand over his mouth just in time, stopping it from charging that magic blast. Hyle made sure Leviathan noticed her, on purpose. He shoved it into a chase, then Leviathan's fury detonated, and it started hunting Hyle for real, slamming through anything in its path, even the land. Hyle was in Tehran, yelling for her to sprint as fast as she could to the place where the plan was waiting. Now he was trapped with no one to rescue him. He had to trust his instincts and fight his way through. Elvin scanned the area, realizing there was still a move he could make to help. He sprinted to the heavyweight ballista, grabbed the rope, and started hauling it back. Varys snapped to him that the ballista's winch was wrecked, so there was no way they could yank the rope back anymore. Elvin couldn't stand by while Heel risked everything for them, so pride in being a great warrior kicked in, and he refused to just watch this happen. He yanked the rope with everything he had, and Mappa jumped in to pull right beside him. Leviathan coils around the entire Heel area, locking him in place and trapping him tight. Then cannon fire suddenly tore into the Leviathan, and the Orcs' ship fired these shots from earlier. Right after, no one got a chance to breathe. Then a mithril arrow tore through the air and slammed into one of Leviathan's eyes. Elvin and Mappa team up together, and they pull the whole thing off like it's a high-stakes mission. And, with the road clearing in front of him, he bolted forward into what was next. He finally crashed into the exact spot he'd planned to trap them. So he lifted his hand exactly as planned. Riel saw the signal and could watch from there. Clairvoyance and signal. Something bigger is coming full force ahead. She slammed into the rock up ahead, right on schedule like it was straight out of their plan. And it unleashed a chain reaction down the cave, driving everything toward, ending with Leviathan toppling under the cave. It was a trap so huge it could swallow even a Leviathan whole. Heel had planned for the worst. If the ballista couldn't stop the beast, he'd already dug a ready-made stash right under the reclaimed land. He then smashed the supporting pillars too, and every move was made just to drag Leviathan down here. Now the final move in the plan was simple. he had to face it head-on and deal with it himself. He yanked out a mithril pickaxe, and he tossed hundreds of rocks and stones everywhere, like the world suddenly turned to rubble. The crest challenged him to mine, and once he did, he figured it out fast. He'd use his boosted power while digging, just to tear down the Leviathan. The monster tore through the air and blasted another ray of magic. And he dodged it, then straight after that, he lunged straight at the Leviathan and slammed it with the power of the Cave King. The crest got the message loud and clear, like it finally understood his orders. And he slammed the pickaxe down like the Cave King's wrath was roaring through him. And it forged the mithril pickaxe into ultimate godkiller metal. Then his crest flared brighter than ever. In the very next second, everyone above the surface watched a blinding light burst up out of the ground, which was apparently forged by the shockwave of Heel's pickaxe strike. Plunging straight onto the legendary Leviathan's head, he smashed it to pieces. His strike punched through the beast's defenses and landed as a devastating critical hit. And the shock surged through the whole Leviathan, shaking every inch of it. It hit so hard that it shattered every inch of the Leviathan's body wide open. And that's how the legendary beast of the legends got wiped out, right from the Cave King Heel's own hands. Then he snatched the rope to claw his way back to the surface. But then the Leviathan let out a dying scream that thundered through the entire cave. They burst up to the surface, and the rocks around them trembled as they landed. And the others clutched the rope too hard. It slipped, he pitched forward and blood hit the ground. Blood spilled from his mouth because he just wouldn't stop swallowing all that noise. Then Taran snatched his rope back and hauled him to safety. Taran yanked him up in a flash because the cave was seconds from collapsing. And then, Rihanna flew in out of nowhere and leaped down to pull Heel to safety. She snagged yet another thread from Tarn and yanked Heel out of the air, right in the nick of time. She grabbed his attention and shouted at him to hang on until they could claw their way out alive, safe and sound. Then he'll tell her point blank, "If you hold me now, you won't make it out." She shot back, then looked him in the eye and told him, "Don't you ever give up," swearing they'd declaw their way out alive. Then the sky opened up, and fresh rocks started raining down on them from above. Then right in front of them, a massive beast's shadow slammed onto the ground. She jolted at it, only to realize the beast had been holding back the whole time. It clutched them both and tore out of the cave, hauling them to safety. They stared in shock, begging the question, who was it, and why were they the ones getting saved? Then, just like that, a massive boulder crashed into their path. The beast reassured them, then shattered the boulder on the spot like it was nothing. They clawed their way out of that cave and somehow made it out alive. And he's gonna corner him and demand to know who he really is. The beast stared in shock as humans actually managed to crush Leviathan. And it turned out the beasts weren't monsters at all. They were kobolds, quietly watching over their highness like loyal protectors. They caught a whiff of him and asked, "Is there a baby?" Kobold washed onto this island in a box, like the ocean spat him out. Elven burst in running, desperate to check if he was really okay. Then he spotted the kobolds, and it was like he instantly recognized them. They remembered Elven and Varys by their old names too, because their tribe had already been hunted out of the land. The kobold names were Ash and Hein, two guards assigned to watch over Reel. They realized Varys already knew about them. Those two guards had to catch Elhamina's message, so the baby had to be right here. Then Reel tore across the ground toward us, snapping right into position, while Ash and Hein lit up with relief the moment they realized Reel was okay. But when Ryle finally came in to heal, Ash and Hein dropped to their knees and practically burst with joy. The moment they saw Reel was safe, relief hit them hard, then guilt crushed them even harder, because they couldn't protect her, and they felt that loss was the worst failure of their entire lives. Heels felt relief at that, but Reel couldn't wrap his head around it. He was still too young to understand anything. Elvin leaned in and demanded to know how Ash ever managed to land on this island. Ash leaned in and told him exactly how everything went down, just as they were about to be swallowed by the sea, after drifting for 2 brutal days. And the orc pirate Camus from the Corvus tribe slammed in and hauled them to safety. Then a boat roared toward the island, and Elvin leaned in, asking Ash if he wasn't supposed to be at the war. Ash told him he had to meet up with Camus, and right now their ship is wrecked and barely seaworthy, so sailing again feels impossible. Then the last bombardment sucked their ammo dry, and Elvin realizes he could have gotten his revenge with ease, where every single life, his included, hung on his decision, and then the boat finally pulled up. He showed up on the island with 2 orcs, and they just stood there like, what do we even say? Then he finally broke the silence and introduced himself. Turns out he was the Lord of the Sheol Reef. The other orc snapped his name, Camus, into the air, saying he ran the Corvus tribe, and after what he'd seen in their last fight, he thought he'd already seen the biggest shock. Then he stepped onto this monster-filled island and realized it was actually run by a human. Camus was 3 times as big as Heel, and trust me, Heel was already massive for an orc. Camus locked eyes with El and blurted, "Wait, El," and Elvin corrected him right away. his name had been changed now. Even after they saved them, he made it crystal clear. He hadn't forgotten how they helped wipe out their hometown, and he couldn't shake the question. How were they going to get revenge on the orcs now? Camus fired back, claiming it had to be fate that brought them together. Camus dropped his sword, dropped to his knees, and offered up his own life. He felt like it was all on him, so he begged the Corvus tribe, swear they'd be spared if they took his head instead. Elvin could tell, once you hit him with that, he made his decision and never looked back. Then the orc behind Camus slammed his voice up, insisting it was Camus doing it all. Then the traitor Camus cut him off for good, telling them they can't ruin themselves anymore, because he's begging them to let him die like this. Heel heard it too, and Elvin instantly snapped at everyone to shut up and listen to Heel. Heel stepped up to Camus and said, "No matter what you choose, I need the truth, what really happened." Then he let the other orcs take over the talk. He told him they once had an orc named Claude, second in command and a total traitor, who bided his time until their boss, Camus, rode out on an expedition, then hit their main base and snatched part of the fleet. Claude snapped and couldn't stand his boss's gentle tactics anymore, so he rallied some orcs, swearing they deserved more power and fame, and even a shot at the fortune. It was brutal to watch so many back Claude. Then the moment you heard, he sprinted straight for the fleet to reclaim it, but Claude had already unleashed chaos and was running wild. Heel finally understood. Claude was the one who struck the Belden tribe. While they were locked in battle with Claude, Leviathan suddenly burst into the fight right in the middle of everything. He'll finally click that the half-bodied orcs and the bodies that washed onto his island, yeah, those were Claude's faction. Elvin got this sinking feeling that it just didn't make sense, because elves were known for their chivalry, but the truth still hit hard. Orcs wrecked his hometown anyway. Camus then admitted the split of his tribe was his fault, guilt crushing him, as he mourned how the flag he inherited from his ancestors was stained. Then Elvin blurted out that he should have kept his people together, because if he had, the Belden tribe's home never would have gotten attacked. Elvin drew his sword and demanded that I take responsibility, and Camus accepted it, sticking to his word, while quietly thinking it would be totally okay to get taken down by Elvin. He'll rush in to stop Elvin, but right when everyone thinks they know how this ends, surprise hits them all. He whipped his sword through the air, but Camus stood, because he didn't finish the job. He thrust his sword into Camus' hands and dared him to a duel, because it was asterisk on asterisk, and the next part would decide everything. As the Corvus tribe's leader, they hammered out the duel agreement and everyone leaned in from the sidelines, desperate to see how it all would play out. Hill couldn't shake his worry about Elvin, because the guy standing across from him was the orcs' leader. So we figured, at minimum, he needed a shield. But Rihanna stepped in and blocked him from doing anything that could mess with the match. He just locked in and watched the whole thing with laser focus. Camus leaned in and told Elvin he was ready to give his life to the Belden tribe. But now that the duel was on, he vowed he'd go in with full force. No mercy, not a single inch. Elvin loved that vibe, and he definitely didn't plan to hold back. He was confident right down to his bones. Goblins, healers, Rihanna, everyone leaned in with their eyes glued to the duel, just moments from igniting. Elvin gripped an axe yanked by a rope, while Camus swung his sword at full force. Then the duel kicked off. Both of them fired off moves without wasting a single second. They clashed instantly, and Camus easily slipped out of Elvin's axe attack and slammed the first blow into his left shoulder. Then came one more brutal swing. Elvin's axe flew right out of his grip. Heel could barely believe it. Things were unfolding at lightning speed. Then Elvin snatched his weapon back in his hands, ready to clash again. Camus bragged that no one had ever managed to dodge his sword like that, ever. As he didn't stop, every swing landed and carved tiny cuts into the enemy. Slashes land across every inch of the elven body. Namu was ridiculously talented, and Fula couldn't stop worrying about her father. Then Elvin clawed his way back into the fight, cranking his attacks speed up again, and this time he lunged his weapon from behind Camus. Camus clocked his sneak attack from behind, and he already had a move ready to shut it down, snapping the axe aside mid-swing like it couldn't touch him. He steadied himself in midair just enough to swing his sword, ripping the blade backward at the elf. Elvin braced. 2 attacks were crashing in on him at once, one from his axe and one from his Camus sword. Then he pulled an unexpected move, so sudden the whole crowd went silent in shock. He intentionally let Camus' sword slice right through his own hand, so he aimed to leave him completely locked out of every sword technique, and once that was done, he swore he'd smash it to pieces. But the battle spiraled into a brutal clash, where only raw strength mattered. Camus snapped at Elvin not to trust his looks, because even now, that guy was still an orc in disguise. And most of the time, the orcs were way stronger than the goblins when it came to grappling. As the fight spikes in intensity, he starts crushing Elvin, wave after wave, and she can't keep up. Elvin snapped back that he didn't care what you said, because he'd turn it into a joke by flexing his strength, fueled by rock-solid faith in himself, even though the orcs were way stronger than a regular goblin. Elven himself was the Belden tribe's greatest warrior, and once his warrior crest lit up, his physical strength shot through the roof. With that kind of strength, he hauled himself up and even lifted the canoe, somehow overpowering his own massive weight and the bigger body size standing against him. Camus just froze in total shock. He couldn't even process it as a goblin scooped him up off the ground. Then Elven slammed Camus' body down hard to the ground. He swung in close, and before he could breathe, blood poured from his mouth. Then he smashed his sword with his bare hands, snapping it clean in half and ending the duel for good. The goblins held their leader, Elven, on a pedestal, proud in every single grin, and instantly rushed over to make sure everyone was okay. Elven laughed and said that orcs have armor for brains, so Camus would be totally fine. Soon enough, Camus snapped awake and admitted it. He'd lost. He demanded the elves finish it right now. Elven shot back way too fast for comfort. From this day on, Camus' life is mine, and I'm not letting you wreck it just like that. Camus' jaw dropped. She was left completely stunned. Then Elven strode up and boomed to everyone that he'd won the duel, claiming he'd crushed the Corvus tribe, and that victory sent the goblins cheering like crazy. Then he hurried over to Heel and threw out a real apology for lunging forward and stealing the spotlight like a show-off. Heel was fine because he already knew what elves were like, and he shot Elven a heartfelt thank you. Hill told Camus he could chill on the island for a bit and get his ship repaired before heading out. He ordered him to pull his whole tribe together, and Camus basically told himself, "I'll pull this off for real," then promised he'd keep everything smooth and cause zero trouble. Then Elven clocked Fula charging in, and she swung a kick straight into him before he could even react. That twisted something in him. He screamed in agony, and he snapped, "What are you doing?" And she closed the distance, then leaned in until her head rested against him. She couldn't shake the worry for Elven, so she pulled him aside and reminded him, no more pushing himself like that again. With everything finally settled, Camus declared the orcs would be under his care for now, then called for the other orcs to line up and greet him. Over 100 Corvus tribe members showed up as his guests, and by the end of that brutal day, the intensity wrecked him, worry and exhaustion crashing down at once. Ash and Haney were itching to obey the Queen's command, so they left and went to serve Real's foster parents. They watched the Belden tribe get their title from him, and the moment it happened, the rest practically begged to be named the same way. He agreed, but warned them that his tame gift wasn't just handed out. It was the only way others could trigger the power of his crest, and it had nothing to do with some sign of trust or how he rated his underlings. He stamped the name Ash onto Ashton. Hina bowed to royalty with a bold grin, like she was about to steal the spotlight, and demanded they start guarding their comrades from now on. He realized things were about to explode into chaos, and Varys promised he'd carve out fresh places for everyone else to live. Then, out of nowhere, a brutal headache slammed into him, because he was still running on leftover exhaustion from earlier. And yeah, he even had a fever, like his body was already giving up. Diana said she'd take him straight to his room, and Varys nodded, stepping back to deal with everything else. He tried to brush it off like it wasn't a big deal, but she hit him with the truth. He must have been absolutely wrecked. So she ignored him completely and stormed into his lab, dragging him along. And it absolutely wrecked him with pure, soul-crushing embarrassment. Camus and Hines could feel the awkward tension in the air, but Hines was so clueless she didn't get it at all. Then she marched straight off to Heel's room. Heel knew she was right. He needed rest, so she handed everything else over to Varys and let him focus on healing. After that, Varys started scrambling for a plan for Leviathan's massive corpse. Then Mappa grabbed it and swallowed it whole. Mappa burst into joyful dancing, basically shouting through his moves that the meat was ridiculously delicious. Then Varys shouted for Golem number 10 and 11 to step forward, and demanded they turn the cave beneath the reclaimed land into a giant freezer. Then, out of nowhere, the Leviathan ended up as their dinner. He knew he'd have to haul the sea-damaged golems back into play too. Then the orcs rolled in and asked Varys if they could lend a hand, bragging that their boats had already tamed these waters. Varys nodded and tossed them ropes so they could lash the golems down. Heel wished he could finally make orcs and goblins coexist, even after everything that happened between them before, no matter how long it took. Thanks to orichalcum shielding, the golems' heart stones didn't crack, so he figured, all right, we just rebuild the golems and roll out again with them. But before any of that, Heel knew he had to stay ready to move, and Rihanna was right there with him, cooking up food like she was fueling his next move. And juggling all that, he kept his care steady too, while lining up help for whatever else he might need. She told him to start eating right, then took the spoon and fed him by hand, one bite at a time. He loved getting fed this way, and before long, thanks to her, he started feeling better for real. And right after that, the medicine Varys brewed from Yggdrasil kicked in, blasting his body back into recovery fast. And he told Rihanna not to lift a finger, because he'd bounce back soon enough. Rihanna told him, "Don't worry, this won't be a problem," then reassured him that it feels great to kick back and rest like this every once in a while. She loved nursing him back to strength, and he couldn't get enough of the way her care and kindness made him feel. But he refused to slow down, because while everyone else kept grinding, he couldn't afford to rest for long. He was desperate to get back to mining right away. Down beneath the caves, a crew of goblins mining struck a weird heat surge around them, like the whole area suddenly turned warmer than the rest. While they kept digging and striking gold, disaster slammed into them out of nowhere, and they watched it unfold in front of their eyes, shocked and powerless. He spotted the water gushing up from the exact spot he'd just dug. But the tragedy they feared flipped into a blessing, because it led them straight to a hot spring. The next day, Heel replayed everything from his journey, how he sailed to an island on a cursed reef, saved a wrecked ship, and finally crushed a legendary beast. Next, even after he'd fought through every hardship that came for him, he suddenly found himself trapped in the single worst situation he'd ever faced in his life. Turns out he was the one stuck sharing a steamy hot spring with Rihanna. She thought it was awesome, but he could barely stand it. It all kicked off a full week ago. The moment the hot spring was discovered, while he was still recovering, he tried to yank himself up and swing his pickaxe. But he tried to swing, but his body screamed in pain and stopped him cold. Then Rihanna rushed in and found him howling in agony, because he'd moved when he absolutely wasn't supposed to. She told him again to take it easy, and he quickly apologized right back. Camus kept the girl on edge by slyly calling him a sinful man, and it shocked him to find out other people were here too. Then Camus shrugged and said he was only passing through, because Rihanna was giving him a tour of the island. Then Rihanna tossed Heel his clothes, wrecked and torn from the last brutal fight, and she stitched them up with spider silk, making them tougher than ever. Then he turned to Renaa and thanked her with real gratitude. Ashton admitted he finally understood. This island was still packed, with surprises waiting to blow his mind. At first, from his side, it looked like some tiny reef, until he realized it hid massive underground tunnels, top-tier smithing gear, and even Camus, who traveled everywhere, had never once seen an Yggdrasil. Heel practically lit up when he heard that, and he was determined to keep making the island a better place. So he told them, "If anything catches your eye, speak up and help out." Camus nodded along and agreed, and promised Heel they'd do everything they could to be accepted as full-fledged islanders real soon. Even the goblins hesitated over how to direct the orcs, and Camus knew moments like this demand patience, because nothing like this happens overnight. Heel told him it'd be fine, because they already got along with humans like him, so understanding would come sooner than later, and Camus felt real warmth at that kindness, and asked Heel how he pulled off such a dominion by being kind to the monsters. Heel shot back that it'd take forever to explain, then told him he was born in Sandfels, and that the Shield Reef was part of it. The name Sandfels snapped into Camus' focus, then Fuller burst in and told him they'd hit some trouble. He demanded to know what it was, and she spilled the answer without holding back. He fills him in on the shock of a sudden burst of scorching hot water erupting underground. He tagged along with the whole crew, right to the spot, just to see it with his own eyes. Varys asked him how he was doing health-wise, and he smiled back saying he felt well enough to get up and walk around. Then he couldn't stop raving about how mind-blowing it was that they'd found a hot spring. Elvin practically lit up, thrilled to finally have a hot spring, because he loved it that much. Fuller stayed icy calm and fired back, asking what they'd do if that cave ever got swallowed by the hot spring and started flooding. The goblins who dug it up spilled the whole story to him, and now that water just wouldn't quit. He'll ask Fuller whether she has any advice for solving problems like this, and she'll admit she isn't sure, because she's never faced anything like this back in their hometown. Hyle paused and decided his first priority was simple. He had to check if this steamy hot spring water was actually safe. Out of nowhere, Mappa burst in and went straight into the hot spring all by himself, soaking it in and savoring every second. Elvin fumed because he wanted to go first, but Varys leaned in and told Hell the water looked safe since Mappa hadn't had a single issue, then promised he'd check it himself later too. Hell felt so relieved. Then he rushed to Mappa, begging them to tell him how he could haul that water out to the outside. Varys said it was going to be brutal. Usually people just ride the mountain's water down from the top, but this time the hot spring was tucked deep inside the cave, so everything was different. Then Mappa kicked back for a moment, and boom, an idea struck like lightning. Then he bolted straight to the blacksmith without wasting a second. He scribbled fresh designs into a brand new plan, then shoved it at Heel, and Heel got it instantly. This workshop was the key, where they'd carve stone into molds, then smelt iron ore to forge all the supplies they needed. They dove straight into the job, and Heel yanked the ores straight out of his inventory. Camus couldn't believe what he was seeing. He watched the whole thing unfold up close as workers rushed around, cranking out dozens of iron pipes straight from the molds. Then MAPA tweaked Golem number 8 and Golem number 9, and now they can blast a blazing line of fire magic straight from their arms, which he could fuse together by melting the edges of the pipes and sticking them side by side. This was the moment a massive project kicked off, pushing the hot water up to the surface. And MAPPA cooked up wild new devices that blasted water gushing out of the cave like a storm. He refused to waste a single drop of water, so he ordered Commune and the others to keep working, building and tending that massive public bath on the surface. He wanted to chip in on the project too, but Rihanna wouldn't let him have it, so he had to step back and make everyone else pick up the slack. After a full week of construction, everything finally wrapped up. Now all that was left was to pull the hot water up to the surface. He loved how that massive bathhouse finally turned out, and Kamu couldn't stop wondering if water would really rise up here, because he'd never seen rigs and machines like these actually run before. After that, MAPPA locked in the animation machines and finalized them. Golem number 10 powered the whole thing with his wind magic, and that underground device came roaring to life. MAPA flicked the switch, and the machine's gears groaned to life, turning over slow and steady. Everyone leaned in, desperate to see the water spill from the statue linked with. With the pipes and machines running around him, it didn't click at first. Nothing seemed to work. Then Mappa slammed his hand into it hard, and the statue machine suddenly roared to life, blasting scorching hot water straight from its own mouth. Heel couldn't stop grinning at how everything was shaping up, and Fuller and Elvin were practically bouncing, already itching to race to the hot spring. So you politely told Elvin he could be the very first one to get in the bath, and they could take their sweet time, right up until he didn't even get the chance to finish his sentence. Elvin blasted him with a kick, sending him flying straight into the bath. Camus flinched at the sudden drop, and Elvin just brushed past it, snapping at the others to get ready for the bath. He told them to wash up first instead of rushing in like a bunch of orcs, but the truth hit hard. He got kicked. After that, the goblins and orcs plunged into the hot spring side by side, finally exhaling in relief after all that heat, which swept their exhaustion clean off the board. Elvin kept needling Camus, claiming he was weak, like just this little work should have wiped him out. So you got all offended just because someone mentioned his beautiful body. Then one more orc cornered Elvin and asked if he'd talked to Camus about his body. He couldn't help it, he'd start parading that gorgeous body, soaking up every bit of pride like it was oxygen. And while Aston and Hinas were busy taking care of Riel, they finally found out the truth. Riel wasn't a prince at all, he was a princess, and this time, Heel pulled up and couldn't stop grinning. Everyone was clearly having the time of their lives. Then he overheard Elvin snapping at Fuller, warning him not to swim in the hot springs, which made Heel snap his focus to another urgent matter. Turns out he forgot to split the baths for men and women. Then he realized nobody here cared. Both genders were just soaking in the hot bath like it was totally normal. He froze when he saw the women completely naked and snapped at Varys, asking why he never kept them separated. Then he realized there was one more person about to show up here. Rihanna, just soaking in that bath, was strolling around like it was no big deal, and then she slid over, offered to scrub his back. And right then, his inner thoughts spiraled out of control. It basically forced him to choose whether to twist this to his advantage or let it slip, or just give up and live by their rules. But he got so shy, he couldn't just leave it alone. He bolted from there, hurling excuses about feeling dizzy, and she just stood there totally baffled by how it all happened so fast. He slipped into the cave with that Shell trailing right behind him, even though he could have gone off to bathe with the others. He told Shell the truth, he wanted to go with the others, but the moment he thought about it, he felt like he'd be betraying them, because even if they didn't know it, he did. He sprinted to the very spot where the hot spring first rose from the earth, and stumbled on a fresh stash of hot water there. He slipped into the bath, and let the warmth melt every ounce of stress and exhaustion off his shoulders. He stared at the machines, and was sure Mopper was a straight-up genius. Rihanna showed up, and right away she caught him in the bath, alone, just soaking in silence. He demanded to know why she was there, and she snapped back that she couldn't stand being away from him. She figured Heel just wanted to soak in peace, far from any noise, and she asked, right to his face, if she could join him too. And that's how he got himself into it. One of the deadliest traps he could have ever walked into. At least that's what he believed. He was shaking with nerves, convinced his dignity and pride were on the line, while Renas stayed totally calm and told him to check the shiny rock right in front of them. It looked like a star. He tried to steady his nerves by diving into his inventory and forcing his eyes to focus on everything he had. Then Rihanna leaned in and told him she had something huge to say to him, and inside, his nerves snapped like a rubber band. He couldn't stop thinking about what she was dying to tell him the moment they were finally alone. She finally spoke up, telling him she still couldn't untangle her feelings about the Belden tribe and their war with the orcs. She hated that feeling too, because even if she knew Kamu wasn't to blame, goblins were terrified with their homes in ruins, and that panic would haunt them like a shadow in the back of their hearts. Even so, she couldn't help smiling. Belden and Corvus were teaming up, sharing meals, and soaking in the hot springs side by side. And that little moment together lit her up with pure joy, so he leaned in and told her. He told her don't apologize for that, because he'd lived it himself. He knew exactly how brutally hard it is to cut loose from the past. He begged her to come see their island, packed with goblins, slimes, cave spiders, golems, kobolds, even a naked old man and a human. And somehow, every single one of them was actually getting along. She finally exhaled in relief, leaned into his back, and slipped into sleep before she even knew it. He got completely blindsided, and panic hit so hard he felt like bolting right then. Then it hit him, how Rihanna had been grinding ever since the fight against the Leviathans. Even with her own energy running on empty that same day, she still pushed herself to help him recover and kept helping others non-stop. He was overflowing with gratitude for her, and he thanked her with all he had. Then he just stayed there, guarding her sleep so he wouldn't wake her. The moment she opened her eyes, she blurted out an apology for nodding off like that. Dizziness hit him hard because he'd stayed in the hot spring way too long, and his blood started roaring straight to his head. Then, finally, he couldn't stop smiling once he'd gotten his bath in. Then he finally realized it. He was back to his old self again, fully recovered. He was so relieved to finally get back to mining that tears slipped out, and Fula and Rihanna lit up with joy for him. Then Camus burst in to congratulate him for finally making a full recovery, and he leaned in and asked if he could steal a moment to talk. They dashed into the open space, gulping in that crisp fresh air, and Camus handed Healer's scroll to him, grinning like it was the perfect surprise gift to celebrate his recovery. When Heel popped it open, he stared in disbelief. There it was, a full-on diagram of a harbor. He fired the question at him, "Did you make it?" And the guy snapped back that Varys sent him to do it, because they'd decided that reclaimed land could become the perfect launchpad for the harbor. Camus also told him he'd heard Heel dreamed of trading with the outside world someday, but they had to rip Belden's ships apart first, because lumber was nowhere to be found. Camus leaned in and told him he could take the Corvus ship. Once they patched up the damage Leviathan tore into its bottom, they still had one more thing to fix: set up a real harbor and dock. He got so hooked on the designs that he upped the game, making them even more exceptional. He'll realize it's even better than the kingdom's own facilities. That's what snapped Camus' focus. Heel was from Sandfels. Heel bragged that he was the 17th Prince of Sandfels, but the truth was he'd failed so hard he got kicked out. And now, every time he brought up his past to Rihanna, his nerves kept melting away. Go on, come on, you gotta feel bad for him. And then Heel hit him with the truth. He lived on this island now, humans never came, and he was determined to turn the place into something better. He decided to corner Varys and Mappa about the construction plans. But Camus hadn't even bought into his plans yet. But after watching Heel's construction tricks and how he built those walls at lightning speed, as he poured life back into the land within them, he froze in shock when Elvin told him his boss could do basically anything. That proved just how absolutely legendary the King of Cavecrest really was. He figured if they did it this way, they'd carve out the perfect harbor. Then he told him, "You can only lay the foundation, so ask Camus if he'll supervise the construction." Varys nodded along too, because Camus was the perfect person for the job. Camus joyfully nodded and agreed to build the most incredible harbor of all. Then he'll also hand him a crew of golems as his helpers. Those golems, numbers 1 through 7, got wiped out earlier by Leviathan, but now they've finally been rebuilt from scratch and are ready to be thrown back into action. With every working piece finally locked into place, the only thing left was simple: tear into more stone and mine it for the harbor's construction. So he finally marched back into the mines, after being gone for ages. And he couldn't stop smiling because he finally got to mine again. Fuller even came over to congratulate him. But she clocked it, he wasn't drawing on the Mithril Isaacs at all. He said he still had them, yet for now he wanted to switch to a smaller, easier Isaacs to work with. Then Aston and Hina's lunged toward Reel, urging her to stay back in the safe zone. But Reel was being a total menace. She kept demanding to run free, and he'd have to ask them to keep an eye on her for a bit. Then Fula snapped that if Reel couldn't lend a hand, Highness would have to step in and do the work. Hina's nodded on the spot and headed for the mine. Then Fula started poking fun, asking if he was good with weapons too, or if he needed an ice axe as well. And now Hina's is trying to get Fula to stop teasing him so hard. Then Aston leaned in and told him, "It's fine, so forget all that and thank F." She praised her for having no fear around them, even after they'd just joined, then leaned in and showed Hina's exactly how to mine. Then Hines bounced back fast, and yeah, he was strong. Before long, he'd mastered mining, quick enough to just. Soon enough, he was right back in the ring, gunning for fuel. Heel lit up when he saw their miner ranks swelling, and the excitement hit him right back just as hard. Then Ashton kicked himself into gear and decided it was time to hit the work again. Then Reel unleashed clairvoyance and pointed straight at the exact spot. Highness and Fula were happily hauling in tons of ore. Ashton shouted for Heel, telling him he'd stumbled on something seriously weird. Hines and Fula froze when they saw Ashton pulling ahead of them, powered by the Reel help. Then the whole crew trekked to the spot together, and there it was, a mysterious box that looked like it was carved from orichalcum. Full couldn't stop wondering if it was the coffin Accord sized for it, but Ashton just didn't buy her explanation. Then he spotted another stone and rushed it over to his ore guide for checking. The new stone was a transport stone. Now he could teleport instantly between transport stones, and how far he traveled depended on the stone size. He figured out that if he found the same kind of stone anywhere else, he could rip it out and send himself right there. Fuller pointed to a hollow spot, shaped just like the stone he was holding right now. Then he shoves it into the hole, and it snaps in perfectly. The empty box suddenly burst into a blinding glow, and everyone froze in shock. It turned out the teleporter was powered by the stone, and now it's already awake and ready to beam them away. Fuller couldn't stop wondering if there was anywhere they could go from all this. Ashton couldn't shake the worry of where this would drag them next. They started arguing over their next move. Send a golem, maybe, or try something else. But nobody wanted to rush into it without thinking. MAPPA rushed to the device and got everyone teleported. When everyone realized Mopper vanished from the device, they were stunned. He decided to chase Mappa, told everyone to stay put, but Ashton cut in, stopped him cold, and volunteered to go instead. Then Reel unleashed clairvoyance, and right away, he revealed exactly where Mappa was to everyone. After they saw it, excitement hit them hard, and they rushed to get there fast. Heel was convinced he could make it there safely, and he told Shell to summon Varys too. Then Reel shot straight into the teleporter. Right behind him, Fola followed instantly. And then Ashton and Hines. Everything got slammed into one device, so packed there wasn't a scrap of space left inside. Hyle said they didn't have to rush and go at once, but no one wanted to leave, so everyone got trapped in it too. Then bam, every single one of them got teleported at the exact same time. In the next heartbeat, they got hurled out the other teleporter, and the world snapped back as they spilled out at the far end of the device. They stepped into a colossal library, packed floor to ceiling with hundreds of thousands of books, stacked everywhere your eyes could land. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Like this place couldn't possibly exist, staring at it, half convinced they'd slipped out of Sheol or were still trapped inside it. He told her they were still trapped on the island, because everything looked exactly like the other rooms he'd found. Same changed stones, same golems waiting to ruin them. That place was terrifying and gigantic, and it felt totally empty, no one around except them. Highness leaned in and told Heel that Mappa was already running circles ahead, and told them to leave at once. He agreed on the spot, then begged him to lead the way, but after he trailed Hainas for a while, refusing to lose him, they rushed to the spot and found Mappa sprawled on the ground, blood pooling all around him. He'll sprint to Mappa, convinced something might have attacked him, but he quickly realized the reason was stupid when he saw the Mappa get a nosebleed just from watching a filthy book packed with hundreds of shameless, inappropriate pictures inside. Mappa scrambled to his feet and spotted a book right in front of him and it held the exact secrets about the King of the Cave's crest. He'll badger Mappa to move faster, and when Mappa couldn't read, he didn't even give the book a second glance. He tossed it aside and bolted to catch up with everyone else. He'll head back to where they started, and when he arrives, he sees Shell pulled off the impossible, bringing everyone else too. He leaned in to ask Varys if there were any damn good books lurking around here, but Varys couldn't crack the language carved on them, and he couldn't heal a thing either. Camus practically couldn't contain himself. Things finally looked wildly adventurous now. Seeing the teleportation device, the towering library, and the eerie signs of an unknown civilization sleeping on Zeol Island, he couldn't stop himself from thinking there had to be a treasure too. He pushed for them to roam deeper around the island, and they all agreed. Then he spotted the wrecked spots still breaking down, so he warned everyone to stay sharp and never go up against the golems head-on. Then they tore into the library, hunting every hidden shelf and secret page. Fuller called him over, and after a bit she told him, "I found a book full of pictures," and the second he stared at them, they realized he'd sketched a massive, super detailed town right on the page. Heel stared at the town and wondered where it was, because those buildings felt weirdly familiar. Rion pointed at the mountain in the picture and said it looked eerily just like the shield. Even though it was a total mismatch in size to Sheol, it was still way more breathtaking than anything around right now. Then he'll finally clock that Shell is staring intently at something, completely locked in. He tracked down Shell's site and stumbled on a massive statue of a woman. Rihanna gushed that the statue looked stunning, like it was carved straight from a goddess's realm. And Heel figured the statue probably honored the one people in Shiel worshipped ages ago. He was honestly stunned to see it, because even the kingdom's own records didn't mention ruins like these. And now he couldn't stop wondering if more of them were hiding somewhere in Sheol, just waiting to be uncovered. They scoured the library's corners, then gathered up their courage and headed out to snatch a few heartstones and magic stones from the shattered golems' remains, because this place was still a total mystery to them. So Varys begged to get his hands on some books, then started cracking the codes while they kept talking. They noticed something eerie in the sound that bounced back from the wall behind them. She tapped the wall lightly, and sure enough, she'd guessed it right. She shouted for healing, then told him, clear as day, that there was an open space tucked behind the wall. After they tore through the whole area searching for an opening, there was nothing. No door, no way in. Fuller asked her straight up, should I just start digging for it? Then he spotted the perfect place to dig, told Fuller right away, and Fuller struck it carefully with the ice axe. And her gut instinct was right. She rushed to see what was inside, and he'll race after her too, just to double-check everything. Surprisingly, he then fired off a congratulation to Fuller, because this secret play. The place erupted with changed stones. Then, just as luck smiled, 3 of them showed up all at once. Fuller still remembered back then. She'd always wake up way earlier than everyone else. The very first thing she did was sprint straight to the cave and start mining. With Golem number 15 at her side, she was on a whole different level of fired up, more obsessed with mining than anyone else. And she was the absolute last one out of the tunnels. Hill used to worry, because no matter what, she was so locked in on mining. But she couldn't stop it. There was something she had to have, no matter what it cost her. After everyone finally clawed their way back to the surface, they huddled together and spilled their thoughts. The changed stone was news to them, because it was the very first time they'd ever heard of it. So Rhianna stepped in and told them it was the real deal. She'd lived through that same evolution, inside that stone. They couldn't wrap their minds around it. Rihanna used to be a regular goblin. Then Camus had no idea, until it all clicked, that Rihanna was secretly the Beldown princess. Camus admitted he'd been thinking the whole time that Rihanna was an elf princess who ran off with Heel, because her ears looked exactly like an elf's. Then Heel and Rihanna froze, shocked so hard they practically dumped their drinks. And he blurted out every word like it burned in his throat, while the commuters kept going, saying it was weird they were still reacting like that. Then he dives right back into the whole changing stones topic, because he never expected they'd suddenly stumble onto 3 of them. Fuller got one of the spots. She was the one who stumbled onto them first and hunted them down for ages. Then he leaned in and told Varys, you can use one too. But Varys wasn't convinced. What if there was someone out there who could use it better? Hyle told him he was certain, and said he'd thought it through, because leaving the Sorcerer King crest unused would have been a total waste for them. Camus practically gawked when he heard that the Sorcerer King used to be stamped with the greatest sorcery-type crest, and when Aston echoed the same belief, he couldn't help but think it would be absolutely mind-blowing if Varys could pull it off. And Elvin hit Varys with the truth. He's in his final years too. If he grabs a new body, he'll stay healthy for way longer. Fuller and Rihanna refused to let a single thing happen to Varys. And then Varys went, I've been mulling over it too. I want to figure out how to use my crest. So he nodded, agreed instantly, and begged Heel to let him use a single changed stone. Once the call was made, they had just one changed stone left, and not a single person showed up to evolve. Ashton and Hina's were totally fine staying exactly like that, because with their crests, they didn't need to change a thing. And then Varys leaned in and grilled Camus, did he have a crest too? Camus blurted out that he had a crest. Then it all clicked, the sea dragon crest. It had power to command the water itself, but there was a catch. Only aquatic monsters could use it, so Camus was completely locked out. Camus made it crystal clear. He didn't want to evolve just to unlock that power. Elvin told him that crest would make him way stronger, and that as a sailor, it'd come in handy fast too. Yet Camus snapped that it meant nothing since he did. He hated that most aquatic monsters wore slimy scales, and he didn't buy that as an upgrade over his own beautiful body, so he flat out refused, and they couldn't force a thing. Figuring out a way to pocket the chainstone for later. Right then, they grabbed those changed stones and rushed into it. She was determined to go first, and she turned to Rihanna and asked, so what am I supposed to do? Then she leaned in and told her, just picture who you want to become, and wish with everything in you for the changed stone. She shut her eyes tight and started imagining, right in her head, exactly who she wanted to become. She couldn't stop thinking, I'm so weak, and somehow, every time, someone always swooped in to shield her. She'd been feeling pretty left out, hanging back while they pushed forward, but that ends today because now she's about to evolve. And her power surges like it finally matches her title, the daughter of the legendary warrior, Elvin. They all gawked because it was their first time witnessing an evolution happen right in front of them, and then gently closed Mappa's eyes, urging Rihanna beside her to step in and finish her part. Fulla finally evolved. Now her eyes could see higher than ever before. She couldn't shake the question, did it actually work? And Rihanna wasted no time, Rihanna then scrambled to cover her body, and before the world could look away, how much she transformed after evolution, thanks to a shell that turned into a blazing mirror. Fulla burst with joy. She finally evolved like she'd always dreamed, and Rihanna rushed in to congratulate her. Elvin beamed when he saw his daughter had grown, then grilled her about whether she was stronger now. Fulla shot back that, yeah, her magic was way stronger than before. Then she started asking herself, how do I even test if I can use magic? Hill offered to check her, and he swore he could see the magic energy streaming off her. So she realized she could finally learn how to use magic for real. Fulla couldn't believe it. After she evolved, her skin stayed exactly the same, and she couldn't stop wondering why. Rihanna somehow looked human, but her face instantly flushed, because her wish was to be irresistibly attractive, and she needed that to heal. So she told them, it'll probably change depending on who you are. Varys wondered if he could change into something new too, so he slammed the chainstone in and evolved right after. But to everyone's shock, Vera didn't change a single bit. Camus couldn't stop staring. Why the hell wouldn't Varys change? Then Varys finally clocked it. Something felt completely different from before. It hit him out of nowhere, and his grip slipped. His staff clattered to the ground. Varys couldn't believe it. After years of brutal back pain, it finally vanished, and he was overjoyed. Heel grinned for him, but then his joy snagged. What was up with that crest? Then he finally clocked it, after giving it one more look. Magical energy exploded from the Sorcery King crest in a wild, overwhelming surge. Varys then decided to see what would happen when he used his crest, and he could feel it deep in his bones. Being the Sorcery King meant he could command any spell the world dared to throw at him. So he kicked things off by blasting a test with fire magic. That swallowed a huge stretch of land in roaring flames. No one saw it coming. This simple spell hit harder than anyone could have imagined. Incredible, and then they saw something even more insane. Varys' body surged into a younger, stronger form. He praised the Sorcery King as utterly mind-blowing, but even so, he couldn't quite get a grip on channeling that magic energy just yet. Everyone's mouth fell open as they witnessed the massive change firsthand. Elvin leaned in and demanded to know if it was really Varys standing right there. Varys burst out that he was drowning in emotions, because he never once imagined he'd actually cast magic one day. Now he felt like a whole new person. Then Heel told him, your magic is unreal, but he also warned that even your look had been altered too. Varys only finally got it when he caught his own reflection in the mirror. Mirror and froze in pure shock, but he snapped back to his old self and crashed into unconsciousness. After he finally woke up, Heel wasted no time and told Varys he'd heard a crazy rumor. King Crest's sorcerer magic can swap its owner into the form that drinks in magic energy the most efficiently. He had only this much to go on, because back in the kingdom nobody would ever show their true powers, and hearing that, Varys let out a real wave of relief. And he couldn't wait to dive deeper into it. Heel felt incredible to help, and he just knew that since Varys was so relentlessly diligent, he'd seize the Sorcery King all by himself. Then Fulla swooped in, pointed at him, and demanded to know if her brand new outfit looked amazing. He told her new outfit looked insanely cool, and she grinned, and said the princess had busted her butt sewing it just for her. Then she turned right back to the mines and started digging from the very beginning. Heel leaned in and promised her she could use the magic crystals anytime she managed to find them. He finally spotted them and figured it was fine because they'd been getting fewer magic crystals lately. Rena and him had already gotten way stronger, and Varys' magic hit like a force of nature. Then I got an idea to teach her how magic energy transforms from start to finish. She'd have to master the secret letters, learn the magic circle script that could summon fire and wind on command. All of them felt a little overwhelmed, but she was buzzing with excitement, just dying to keep going. She poured every ounce of her time into training her magic, and her gut instinct wasn't just good, it was terrifyingly sharp, snapping up things in no time. She unleashed her magic attacks at lightning speed, but even so, she was still way out of range of their aim. He couldn't hold back his joy. He grabbed them and burst into happy leaps like he'd finally been given what he needed. Elvin got worried her aim was off and snapped into Mappa, but he grinned and told her it was actually pretty solid for a first try. She wasn't just hardworking. Heel looked Elvin in the eye and said she truly admired her father's strength. Elvin said he'd be over the moon if it really played out like that, but she told him she'd always hammered the same skills over and over, again and again, just so she'd never get left in the dust by her friends. By telling him a story of how she busted her ass after she got knocked out by Princess Ney. The game of stones pushed her to the edge. She choked up, broke down, and cried. And that's when Heel realized it also meant that Fuller only got pushed into evolving too, just because the princess had already evolved first. And she hated losing, especially when it was to a friend. Heel was thrilled to finally have a friend to spar with and push herself harder. But yeah, jealousy clawed at him, because he'd never had a friend like that before in his whole life. Meanwhile, work on Harbour roared ahead without pause, while they hauled the ship into the port to kick off the repairs. First, they slammed a dock into place at the harbour so ship repairs could start ASAP, and Camus was desperate to return, because the Corvus tribe's families were out there, waiting and hiding. Hyle reassured him that he didn't have to stress about finishing the harbour, then promised to set sail the moment the ship repairs were done. So Camus burst out his gratitude for the kindness. And he told him, "I want to start trading soon, so figure out what you'll trade in the meantime." Other orcs marched up to Heel, saying, "You're free to drop the sea trade, hand it to us," and they promised him a fat haul of items. Heel was practically bursting at the seams, itching to shove off and finally set sail. He couldn't believe it, he was finally about to start trading with the outside world. So the orcs thought, if he can rake in gems from Sheol, let's cash in too, and they asked whether they could harvest from Yggdrasil as well. Then Heel said, "We'll talk about it later." But then, out of nowhere, a monster's shadow surged up from the sea right by the docks. The orcs were getting everything done smoothly, and they were so close, most of the ship repairs were already finished. They finally saw a way to head back to their real job, because after weeks of not sailing, anxiety had them on edge. The shadow prowled through the water, creeping closer from behind them with every second. It burst out of the water like a living nightmare, and the orcs jolted in panic, because this snake-like monster's sudden strike sent the whole camp into chaos. I heard this crazy noise blasting in. Then he snapped his gaze toward them, trying to figure out what kind of monster they were. While the snake-like monster rampaged across the harbour, smashing things here and there, and the orcs were bolting away from it like it was hell itself. Right when everything looked doomed, Camus burst in and slammed a kick into the monster. He launched it so hard it went flying backward. He was on the clock, defending the harbour with every heartbeat, and he couldn't believe it. Those orcs were backing away, sprinting in reverse with pure terror as the monster bore down on them. He ordered them to get ready, then braced for the counterattack. But they were terrified of the monster, because to them, it looked exactly like Leviathan. Camus never saw this coming. He told them to look again, because this monster was way smaller than Leviathan. Then more snake-like monsters slithered into view and tore into the terrified orcs. Marpa arrived right on time, handing Camus the brand new sword like a life-saving miracle. Since his earlier sword got smashed in that duel, Camus gripped his brand new sword and cut straight through the monster that dared to stand between him, like it was nothing. He stared in awe at the razor-sharp orichalcum sword, and immediately showered Mappa with praise for his incredible craftsmanship. Heel stormed into the harbour, demanding to know what monster Camus was hiding, only for Camus to slap a warning in his face and stop him from getting any closer because it was too dangerous. Even after the monster's head got chopped off, that severed part still jerked back to life and kept moving. Then Camus blasted the truth to everyone else. This monster was an evil moray. As a whole wave of those snake-like monsters finally clawed their way up to the surface. But the very next second, the truth hit. This monster had one single main body. And those snake shapes weren't weapons at all. They were just its arms, and Camus yelled that they had to smash the main body, or it'd just keep snapping back in seconds. Boom. The monster regrew its arm and came swinging again, blasting out those nasty snake arms like before. Then Fuller unleashed a blazing fire attack, and right then, it got slammed by the flames. She rushed in to help, but the moment she spotted the snake coiled right in front of them, seeing her arm regenerate was too disgusting for her to bear. So she turned and sprinted off, bolting away from it. Heel shoved her to a safer distance, then she snapped, "So what now? What do we do about that monster?" Camus snapped that they had to smash the main body, but its arms blocked the shot, and he would have normally handled it with cannons, only they refused to risk blasting the harbour. While the others kept the monster busy, Varys slipped in behind it, ready to strike from the shadows. Then he slammed his sorcery, King Crest, into place, and then he poured it into his magic using the state. Varys whipped out water magic, and snapped it into deadly ropes of water, to bind every single arm of the monster. Then, as soon as he saw that opening, he struck. He signaled for a heal, then thrust a command at Fuller, "Lightning with me." And they team up, slam into the monster, and watch it shatter into pieces. They were over the moon, celebrating how they handled it cleanly. No chaos, no damage to the harbour at all. And Heel couldn't stop smiling. seeing just how far Varys and Fula had surged in the blink of an eye after revolving. While some folks cheered at how far she'd come, Elvin's mind was stuck on something else entirely. Apparently, the orcs were drowning in shame because Camus never imagined Leviathan's fear would dig a wound so deep it carved straight into their hearts. He finally clocked that he messed up by not reading the crew's whole mental state, and now they can't even set sail across the ocean like this. He tried to talk them around, but they wouldn't budge, because they swore they weren't dealing with just one Leviathan, and that another one could be lurking out there. Varys nodded, saying they could squeeze out one more try. Then Fula snapped back that the odds were tiny, because it was a legendary beast. Elvin figured the Corvus tribe had it even harder, stuck in fear, unable to break free. And Varys told Camus, if you want to reach your people fast, grab a few from the Belden tribe too. Camus snapped back that Belden fighters couldn't survive the patched-up ship. And more than anything, the Corvus were the masters of the sea. If they couldn't sail, their pride would drown with them. Heel and the others could practically see how badly he was hurting about it. And Rihanna jumped in, saying they should heal if he could forge a ship so unbreakable that even Leviathan couldn't crack it, and that would finally calm the Corvus tribe's fears. Hyle loved the idea and immediately pictured the ship's hull wrapped in metal armor. But Camus warned him it wouldn't be easy. Metal hulls were so heavy that they'd drag every movement in the sea. Fuller said they might use Orcalcom since it was super light, but Varys snapped back that it wouldn't work for them at all. Orch alchem was so rare they couldn't get enough of it to coat that giant ship hull. Then MAPPA jumped in with a crazy idea and started sketching on the ground, eyes fixed on what he'd drawn. Then there it was, the drawing of the Leviathan. And one more twist, something that looked just like Leviathan. Varys finally caught what Mappa was trying to get across, and they hauled themselves to the spot where the dead Leviathan's body lay. He's about to feel it again. How wild it is to beat something this dangerous. Leviathan's scales laughed at the cannon first wave, then even magic failed. Every normal trick they had slid off useless, because nothing could even scratch that hide. So he drew his mithril Isaacs, and with the Cave King's power roaring behind it, he mined the scales of Leviathan like they were pure treasure, pulled straight from a monster's skin. Its scales looked heavy, but they were light as air. And that's what made the beast so quick and razor agile even with all that size. And later on, he got to work processing those scales. Mappa melted the earlier arrowheads to forge mithril tools, turning every scrap into weapons fit for war against the Leviathan. Mappa and Camus huddled together, figuring out what else they needed to reinforce beyond the exterior. Then they even mapped out a whole infrastructure redesign. They were going to crank up the scale reinforcement to the max, all while still keeping their ship sailing skills sharp, and the whole thing damn near unbreakable. That's how it all began, building a ship with an orichalcum frame, while the inner boards and mast were carved from Yggdrasil branches, and they forged the armor using Leviathan scales. And after all that, they set their sights on one thing, crafting a ship for the Corvus tribe. As they stared up at the towering hulk of the ship, that night as the sky dimmed, Heel leaned in and told Camus. It was almost dinner time, and he promised, "I'll be there in a bit." Camus stood by the grave where their dead comrades lay, watching as Heel and the others paid their respects, and Camus felt so grateful he couldn't thank them enough. Camus began telling Heel the story, about 100 years ago. After endless wars with humans and other tribes shattered them, one man finally gathered the orcs with nowhere left to run and led them straight to the sea. Kamu, an orc hero of the Corvus tribe, single-handedly forged a massive fleet, big enough to clash with a whole nation's army. And after that, that name got handed down again and again to every Corvus tribe leader for generations. When it was Camus' turn, the air practically crackled. He was furious, stuck with traitors inside his own tribe, and he couldn't even get his people fired up to head back out to sea. He'll feel bad for him, then cutting off mid-sentence, he just says, Camus. Tom Yu said he was going to build himself into someone strong enough to protect the people around him. With fierce determination blazing in his eyes, he vowed never to disgrace the proud name Camus. The next day, the ship was finally finished, and they wasted no time, opened the watergate. And with the golems lending their strength, they tore the brand new ship right out to sea. It looked tougher than every other ship. Leviathan scales were forged into its hull, giving it a sharp, beast-like presence all on its own. Fuller and Ashton stared in pure awe at the ship, but Heel's eyes narrowed, because his mind was locked on something far more worrying. And Rihanna could tell the Corvus people were on edge, like something big was about to happen. Carmel rallied his crew, laid out their test training, and practically demanded they snap out of their gloom and get excited. He clocked that something still felt off with their behavior. He watched him shut his eyes and clung to the certainty of the plan he'd cooked up with Heel, and shot him a clear signal to start it. Bill trusted Camus to swipe things from here, and he roar the order, Golem 16, break formation, get out. People couldn't stop wondering what he was up to. Down in the crushing blackness of the water, a colossal shadow loomed like a monster about to break the surface. It burst up from the water, breaking the surface right in front of the Corvus tribe's brand new ship. The crew's watchers spotted something up ahead and immediately blared the warning. The crew started whispering, "Is it a monster?" and nobody could stop staring at it. Golem number 16 burst into view, and it looked like a wild, snake-shaped nightmare. Because that's exactly what the Corvus tribe feared most. It looked just like a leviathan to them. Then 16 tore in with its magic attack. Their ship just shrugged off the magic blast like it was nothing at all. While the crew panicked, convinced the 16 out there was a leviathan, they shouted at Kumu to get everyone out of here, right now. Kumu shot in fast and soothed them into silence. He told them the ship wouldn't even flinch after an attack like that, then snapped them to stay calm and lock eyes on their opponent. When they finally turn and really look at it, they stared at it, stunned. It was carved from rock. Meanwhile, back on land, everyone was baffled. Why was a golem shaped like Leviathan, and why was it charging straight at them? He told them, loud and clear, not to interfere with anything at all. Kamu fired up his crew and kicked off a mock battle, built to take on the Leviathan. The crew panicked, thinking they'd never bring down something that huge, and Kamu snapped them back to the pride they used to carry, invincible sea warriors. Because after Leviathan crushed them and left not a scratch, he finally understood exactly why they were terrified. But he clenched the changed stone in his hand and made it crystal clear. He wasn't quitting, because he was ready to challenge the sea again. Others spot the stone clenched in his hands, and Camus sprinted to the water, leaped down and shouted his goodbye to that perfect, old body, then demanded everyone watch him like a hawk. Right as the new Camus debuted, the Corvus tribe's leader stepped into the spotlight. He dove straight into the water, and that stone instantly lit up, answering his wish with a blazing glow. People were stunned to see it, and now they couldn't stop wondering how this was all going to explode. Then step out, because the moment you emerged from the sea, everything changed. He finally cracked the code and transformed into Aquaman, fully evolved and unstoppable. And now he finally unlocked the Sea Dragon crest. He was ready to go toe-to-toe with Golem 16. Then he blasted through the water at a jaw-dropping speed straight toward it. 16 launched wave after wave of blazing rays at it, but Camus slipped past them like it was nothing, and his aquatic powers let loose a burst of water to seal the deal. He shot across the water like he was flying. Even Camus stared in disbelief, watching the sea dragon bend the water around him like it was made for his hands. Now he was locked in, ready to smash straight into 16 head-on. So he moved in for a closer look, and the stone-built thing hit back with serious defensive power. He kept slipping past 16th strikes, hunting for the one clean opening to land a hit. The other orcs stared in disbelief as their boss tore into the fight all alone. Rihanna and Heel were worried sick, and it hit them hard as they started thinking. Even a fully evolved Camus could still get absolutely crushed by a golem. Then Camus snapped his attack in half with his bare hands. Even after getting shoved back under the water, the golem still came charging straight for him. Then the other orcs in the crew inched their ship closer to come to you, and aimed the armory at the golem, because they refused to leave their boss to battle it alone. Cannons roared and arrowheads slammed into the golem as the whole crew fought to shove it back, until the pressure cracked open the perfect opening for Camus. Camus practically lit up, relieved their spirits were soaring again. So he plunged beneath the waves for his next move, and unleashed the full force of his crest, Sea Dragon 2, to whip up a raging tornado around Golem number 16, which gulped it down whole, even with that massive size. And once 16 slipped inside, the tornado roared to life. With its powers shackled, the golem couldn't move freely, while Camus zipped around without restraint, hunting to smash it to pieces, hoping that Heel could get it fixed later on. So he yanked out his sword, wrapped it in water like a spinning drill, and turned his blade into a weapon that burrowed through anything. Camus snapped his sword into a blazing trident drill. He drove it in and stabbed 16, setting off a brutal collision that smashed 16 clean apart. Everyone finally let out a breath of relief when Camus managed to take down the golem, no matter that it was just a mock battle. The orcs stood tall, praising their captain, because he chose to trade away his old, failing body to save them. After all the chaos finally died down, everyone sprinted back to the harbor. Camus and the other orcs charged in, and Heel welcomed them with open arms. He leaned into Camus and bragged that nothing could beat him out there. But Camus swore he could pull it off, all because his crew had his back. He could feel their doubts and distrust in the air, weighing down his confidence, and his crew too. He swallowed his pride, apologized to the whole crew, and asked if they still wanted to brave the seas with him after everything. The orcs practically vibrated with excitement as they followed him, telling him he didn't even need to ask, because he was their boss no matter what. Elvin then teased Camus, reminding him he had to surrender the beautiful body he'd been so proud of. Then Camus yanked off his shirt and flaunted his brand new shining body. And in his eyes, he wasn't just handsome. He looked like he'd been reborn into a brand new, mind-blowing stage of beauty. With the perfect ship and the perfect crew locked in, He was sure their voyage would finally roar into success from this moment on. And once he hears it, he'll say yes just like that. After that, Camus spent a whole week putting their ship through the ringer, testing, tweaking, and perfecting, while Heel and Varys hashed out exactly what they wanted to trade. The day before you set sail, the Corvus tribe threw a massive farewell party, and they ate that feast like it was their last night alive. And when night finally rolled in and the chaos went silent, Heel marched off to inspect the ship with Rihanna and Shell, itching to see it up close instead of just imagining it. And asked if she liked ships, he shook his head and told her it wasn't like that, but he's been totally obsessed with the outside world they can finally reach once the ships fire up. Rihanna asked if he'd ever want to travel by ship, and he just admitted he hadn't even thought that far yet. But deep down, it was still just a fantasy, because even back in the kingdom, he never could find his place. Once he finally landed a spot to live with all of them in Shield, it stopped being temporary and turned into his real home, and that made Rihanna beam with happiness. Then Real's eyes snapped. Someone was posted at the ship's watch spot, keeping a close eye. Then Camus dropped down, already knowing Real's eyes would never let him go unseen. He'll apologize for jumping on board without warning him, and Camus will wave it off, saying this ship is partly his too. So he always got welcomed here, because this was the only human he ever truly trusted. Camus then leaned in and told him he needed to talk, so he just couldn't help wondering what was coming, because Camus' tone was dead serious. Camus cut in and told him straight up, it was all about his homeland. In the kingdom of Sandfalls, his father sat on the throne and ran everything. He'll drag him back and demand everything he knows about his homeland, the kingdom of Sandfalls. Camus hit him with a jaw-dropping truth. The Claude faction that betrayed him wasn't acting on their own. They were hired by the royal family of Sandfallis. He froze in shock at the news and, at first, he couldn't wrap his head around it, because the kingdom of Sandfellis despised monsters with a burning passion. You finally break the silence. You've been quiet about this for way too long, and now you're apologizing. But when they went after Claude, they stumbled on a lone survivor, barely clinging to life, hidden in the wreckage the Leviathan had torn apart. In his final breaths, he finally admitted their mission: to crush every powerful monster tribe lurking near the kingdom. And for that, they were offered massive rewards and the full backing of the strongest nation across the entire Burlian continent. At first, they wanted to hire Camus, but Claude shut it down, because he already knew Camus would never say yes. Heel was left speechless, because it was his father who ordered it, and now he couldn't stop himself from demanding to know why. Camus then shot Heel a message, telling him the kingdom of Sandfallis itself. Under his father's reign, this old nation exploded with massive expansions until it became the biggest power on the whole continent. So bringing in the Corvus tribe was probably just their next move to grab even more influence. And after all that, he still couldn't shake one more worry, so he pressed Hyle again. Are you really expelled? Hyle confirmed it, but Camus leaned in and asked him point blank if it was really true. Because the shield followed the Cave King, and the buried treasure trove was real, and that crest with the power to pull it all out whenever he wanted. That felt way too perfect, like fate slammed the pieces together at the exact wrong time. Once he heard this, he couldn't stop it. His mind started screaming that Hell's father might have already known about Cave King's power and everything hiding under the shield's ground. It would be weird, though he had zero reason to hide the power of his crest, because if he truly meant to build up the island, he would have brought more people with him. You just told him that the reason for all of this could be whatever was buried and silent inside Hill's father's shield. He refused to let it ever see the light. Rihanna caught on in a flash. Camus was pointing straight at the underground ruins. Even now, you can hear it. He still had doubts about Heel from the very start, convinced she was just pretending to be clueless about everything between them. He used to blend in, but once he lived here, he finally saw it. He was totally different from the rest. So he trusted him and slung his hand onto Heel's shoulder, urging him to keep it right there in his. In his head, he still crowned himself the rightful prince of Sandfallis, thinking Zeo was just another piece of his kingdom. So there's a day coming when he'll have to take on his own country to keep Shield safe from them. He finally understood what everyone in the Camus was saying, and he dug back through what he'd forgotten, because even while they'd shipped him away, he still had the links to the Sandfalls and to his father. The very next day, Camus and his Corvus tribe launched into the sea, carrying nothing but warm, heartfelt goodwill for everyone back from the Shield. Now it was time to finally reunite with the families they'd left behind, hiding in secret. And on top of that, he got number 16 repaired, then sent it with Camus to escort everyone, keeping them safe all the way through their voyage. Then he huddled everyone up and spilled what Camus said in that conversation, and apologized to them, because the real mastermind behind the attacks on the Belden and Tibris tribes wasn't some random villain. It was the royal family of Sandfellis. Elvin told him he didn't need to apologize at all, and that none of this was his fault, then pushed the two of them to stop stalling and figure out what to do next. Varys sank into deep thought, staring at the mess it would bring, because having contacts from his homeland was bound to blow up in his face. Elven was so confident, he let anyone who messed with the monsters get blasted out of here, and Varys warned him, because that move could spark a full-on war. And it left Hyle terrified, because he dragged them into something awful. Elven snapped at him that he couldn't keep feeling that way, because S.H.I.E.L.D. was now the place everyone called home for real. His eyes snapped open after hearing it, and he didn't waste a second being timid. He demanded everyone's help for what came next. Some people felt way more confident just watching his cheerful vibe, and Varys told him that sending him here might have been about cashing in on the resources, so they could arrive soon enough to strike a deal and trade with him. So monsters and humans could live side by side, not because they understood each other, but because they both wanted the same thing. That plan would flood his country with massive riches, proving Heel had conquered the Shield for a reason. Yet even then, Sandfels might still come crashing in and wreck everything. Ashton asked if Varys was saying they had to be tough enough to bargain with that kingdom, and Varys nodded in agreement. While Fuller and Rihanna kept pushing their own simple ideas, they set out to make the island even better. Ashton pictured the negotiation plan in his head, but it all hinged on one thing: the Sandfels' real intentions. Heel figured it might be exactly what Camus and Rihanna had been hinting at earlier, that the answer might be hiding right in the civilization, trapped beneath the Shield's underground ruins. Varys admitted they still knew nothing about the Shield and swore he was counting on figuring it out by cracking the library books. Then it hit him, every idea clicked together, and in one clean stroke, he landed on the perfect plan they could all do. To sweep up the very best miners they had, the elite of their own ranks. So he builds the Shield ruins excavation crew: Heel, Fuller the kobolds, plus the slimes and cave spiders. Fuller taunted him, claiming it was the same crew that always got to mine, but Fuller didn't care. He wanted to spark them from the inside, slipping a fresh jolt into their minds. Rihanna packed portable rations for everyone and told him, "Don't forget, get back before dinner. He'll thank her the second he returns." With everything locked in, he geared up and plunged right back into digging up the new ruins. He decided he had to dig into the mystery of Shield, because only then would he finally understand what his father was trying to claim as his own. Fuller fired off the question, did he have a plan to dig deeper into the ruins? And he told her they'd start first. Scout the already excavated ruins first, then dig carefully. No smashing or you'll ruin what's still standing. They chased the magic energy lurking in every forgotten ruin, and they watched reel like a hawk, ready to pounce on any reaction. They kept digging with relentless focus, pushing deeper day after day, until a whole week vanished. But weirdly, it was like the place swallowed every clue. He couldn't even track down the passage remains between the rooms. Then Ashton explained how they zipped straight to the library, using a teleportation device. It could let them jump between the ruins they'd already uncovered, because there were never any real connecting paths, just teleportation devices stuck at each site, and later, those devices were likely lost. Heel dared to hope it might work, and couldn't stop wondering what they'd use as a starting point to dig deeper. Ashton leaned in and told him dinner was almost here, so they had to head back, then one step at a time. Oriana might snap at them for being late. Heel nodded, then told everyone, "That's it, we're done for today." But he realized that Reel was nowhere in sight. Everyone snapped into action, scouring the place because Reel was convinced she might have slipped off alone again. He'll hear scratching in the walls, and once he followed the noise, he finally reached Reel, and the second he saw her bleeding paw, worry snapped tight in his chest. He told her to calm down, but Reel wouldn't slow. Fuller finally snapped, "That looks brutal, what happened to you?" Heel leaned in and said Reel looked ready to claw into that spot ahead. No questions asked, so Fuller decided, "Fine, I'll dig." She drove her ice axe right into the spot and made it count. She, Ashton, and Haines roll in together with Heel. We all jumped when we realized the remains were still. The cave still held the deep, chilling remains of bird bones, buried like a dark secret. He noticed Reel jabbing at an egg, dead bird, and all, like it was the final clue to everything. But it was fossilized. He figured the body had been buried for ages, until it slowly turned into solid stone. And he tried to put it into words for the real world. But Reel wouldn't budge 1 inch from that egg. He was determined to protect it, no matter what. But Heel and Ashton just stood there, completely baffled, not knowing what they were supposed to do next. Then she figured it might crush them later, so Rihanna finally took action, so they could carry that egg with them. Then she snatched the egg, strapped it into a harness on Reel's back, and the whole contraption clung to him while keeping the egg locked in place. Back it looked downright adorable in real life, and Heel asked if the egg felt heavy, but she lit up and said she was totally fine, thrilled she could carry it around with ease. After that, Reel refused to leave the petrified egg behind, and clung to it, even when it was time to sleep. Heel started to feel like it was finally gonna happen, like he might actually hatch, once he saw just how fiercely Real cared about it, but he couldn't shake the fear it might not even happen. Even while they slept, those eggs looked like they were alive, just waiting. Next day, they dragged themselves back to the dig, and Highness suddenly spotted something bizarre, then told Heel it looked brand new. And the moment he dug there, a weird, wrong sound started crawling out. But no matter how he strained, he couldn't make out a single thing from that spot. Neither one could bamboozle it, no matter what they tried. Highness insisted, though, that he could hear everything clearly, even among the Tiberius tribe. So he was certain something felt off and unnatural, but he just couldn't find the words to explain it. He tried to tell them, ahead of us is a steady road. No dips, no shocks, just smooth flow, and he really meant it. Real was already out cold too, so they couldn't verify anything. Heel didn't hesitate. He went digging right there, like that was the only move that made sense. They answered Hina's, kept digging, and listened hard to make sure they were cutting the right path. Then they dug on and on until Heel himself finally heard the water rushing too. He dug into the source, tracking the sound until he found exactly where it was coming from. And when it finally opened, they found a hollow space sitting right behind it. Right as he was about to step forward, Taran flicked out her web and pinned it under his heel. He froze in shock, then realized Taran nailed it, because when he finally turned, he spotted himself standing on a raised ledge with. He shoved ahead without looking back, then turned and thanked Taran for the help. And out of nowhere, they spotted a massive tower-like pillar ahead, and from the very top, it kept blasting out water non-stop. It was totally man-made, which is why Heinz felt that wrong, unnatural vibe, and they still pushed through, tracking down more ruins and finding them for real. He couldn't stop wondering how far that pillar plunged, but it went so deep that even Ashton, equipped with his razor-sharp optimized eyes, couldn't spot the bottom. Then Ashton leaned in and froze. Water was blasting out of the pillar's surface, and there were no pipes or outlets anywhere behind it. He'll spot a blue stone churning out the water, and he ordered Taran to drive that stone into the pillar. Taran whipped out her spider web once more and ripped a blue stone straight off the pillar. And after the cage, King Crest checked it over with a razor-sharp stare. He finally figured out it was the spring stone powering the magic that conjures water. He stared in awe at how one thing could reshape the water, and his mind raced. If they could pull this off, they'd have a water source anywhere they went. Ashton stared into the darkness, trying to figure out how in the world water even ended up here in the underground world. So he said they could probably reach the other ruins if they just follow the water, and when he understood that logic was solid, he decided to go down. But suddenly, Hina's caught another sound, and this one felt way different, and this time. Then right nearby, digging started up again, loud and clear, and he snapped his finger at the wall where the sound was coming from. He stared into the wall and felt a rush of magical energy spilling out from it. So whatever blasted out of that wall was packed with magic energy, and it instantly lit up everyone else. As that mysterious digging source finally crept right up to them, Heel could feel it. This mysterious thing was dripping with power-laced magic. Then it finally burst free after he clawed and dug his way through the wall. A massive shadow loomed over them, and they couldn't stop wondering what monster, or miracle, was about to show itself. Heel figured it might be a legendary dragon too, so Hina's kept his guard up and never blinked. Then that mysterious creature unleashed a bone-chilling shout at Heel and the others, mistaking them as those underground people. But just when you'd expect it to strike, that mysterious creature lost its balance and tumbled down the ridge. He yells for help, then wastes no time. He orders Taran to fire a spiderweb straight at the monster and keep the thing from crashing down. Heel, Ashton, and Highness lunged to save it, but the weight crushed their hopes. And at this pace, it might snap and crash, dragging them all down with it. He told them to hang on for just a second, and he pushed farther ahead, firing up his crest powers and grinding rocks to use their processing effects to forge the scaffolders along the wall, just beneath the mysterious creature. Meanwhile, Fuller and the others clutched their freed grip, dangling from the spider rope. But the dragon was totally fine, thanks to the scaffolders below it. Heel ordered it to clamber up the rock stakes, and Fuller couldn't believe it. They actually saved the dragon without a second thought, and now she was terrified it might lunge and eat them. But the whole crowd froze in confusion and pure nerves as the dragon surged upward, hauling itself higher with every climb. Dragon demanded to know whether Heel and the others were the ones running these underground ruins. And bam, right when they didn't expect it, they both had the exact same thought about the dragon. Then they hauled him up to the surface, and he dug into that food with everything he had, finally tasting a real meal after hoarding it away for ages. He finally learned the dragon's real name, Royden. And crazy enough, he was actually an Earth dragon, the real deal. Harris could barely believe his luck. He was finally about to see a legendary dragon from the stories he'd heard for ages. Fuller clearly knew the legend too, but the real dragon looked nothing like what she'd imagined. And then he'll corner Roydon and demand to know if those underground ruins were really his. Roydon snapped back that he wasn't even from around here, claiming he'd hauled himself over from the Elto continent, something nobody in this place had ever heard of. Roydon told them his land was a fiery inferno, volcanoes blasting, magma rivers everywhere, and territorial dragons squaring off non-stop. He asked if the Elto continent was close, and Roydon just grinned like, "Nah, I tore through the bottom of the ocean," then sailed straight east for about a month, before he said he'd reached this very place. Heel snapped in disbelief when he heard that he was dug up from the bottom of the ocean, and Roydon admitted he'd been terrified at first since he'd never seen people like them. Then Roydon thanked Heel for saving him earlier. Meanwhile, Heel fumed because he'd lost the digging scale, and then Roydon too. Keep telling them, maybe they're really thinking he's talking straight to them. But really, he wasn't talking at all. He was sending his words straight through his mind with telepathy. He'll ask if he can read their hearts too, and while it isn't the same, it's close enough to feel like it. Roydon could hear the thoughts of the people he wanted to talk to, and understand every last one. And then it happened. Roydon's thoughts got ripped straight into their heads, translated as if everyone's mind spoke the same language, so talking back and forth became effortless, even without words. Fuller buzzed with excitement, itching to find out if telepathy was real magic, or some mysterious crest power. Roydon told her, "I know nothing about magic or crests, but back when I was an earth dragon, I used my horn to send my thoughts out into the world." Heel and Varys leaned in close, studied the horn, and realized it was the exact place where the magic was being gathered in Roydon. Everyone expected it because he was an ancient dragon, and of course that meant strange powers. They didn't even realize they were there. After that, Roydon leaned in and confessed he couldn't stop wondering about a towering tree loomed behind them, and he demanded, "Is that Yggdrasil?" Roydon said he'd known about that tree for ages, and he was sure it was even more majestic in real life than anything he'd ever heard. If he really believed a freaky tree like this could exist, then every rumor he'd heard had to be hiding something real too, because this wasn't just a fairy tale. He leaned in and asked if there was a continent nearby called Paradise. Heel hesitated and Roydon jumped in. He swore it was a continent way out in the east, where humans and monsters coexist, packed with all kinds of peoples, rich culture, and wild landscapes where nature is everywhere. Roydon finally realized it was a tiny island, but it somehow lined up perfectly with the rumors he'd been hearing. And he wondered if he was really talking about the burly on the continent. Well, Rihanna wasn't so sure about that either. Roydon thought it might not be true anymore. Then Varys leaned in and asked if he was hunting for a fresh place to move. Roydon shot down the offer, and flat out said his real goal was something else entirely, ending with the gut feeling that hooking up with Heel and the others could be pure luck. He shouted for everyone to huddle up, and as he dropped his basket onto the ground, he let them see what he'd brought. They showed up to see what he'd been yapping about. Then Roydon cracked the basket's lock wide open, swearing he'd reveal a rare haul of Elto goods from a faraway land. He popped back in and introduced himself again as Roydon, the traveling merchant, then urged them to feast their eyes on his mind-blowing items. Heel never saw Roydon turning out to be a merchant. Roydon admitted his business was tanking in Elto because the fighting wouldn't stop, so he packed up and expanded into a whole new land in Sheol. Roydon cracked open his basket and out spilled dozens of brand new, never-seen items. Yet the real shock hit him hardest when Roydon explained it wasn't magic storage at all. It was a compression basket made from Yojigan lizard stomach that squeezed anything you put in there, so it could hold whatever they wanted. And some of the pieces were so gorgeous they practically glittered, all forged from dragon materials. He told them the vase was forged from ground dragon scales, the knife from bound-up nails, and the rest of the gear was crafted from top-tier dragon material too. Then Heel realized why he'd never spotted any of it before, since dragons are so rare you basically only hear about them, not see them. Roydon then stepped in and healed the fire dragon and wyvern dragon eggs, bringing them back to life. They were both flying dragons, but ice clung to them like a curse, so Varys demanded to know why that frost was there. Roydon told them the real reason. Those eggs had to be preserved so they could be boiled and eaten later, and Heel couldn't believe they were just food, not something more. And he swore it was totally normal, right down to dragons treating other dragons' bodies like useful resources. They could warm the eggs and hatch the dragons if they wanted. Then he'd go ask Roydon whether those newborns would end up getting attached to them. Roydon nodded and told them, dragons bond with whoever they see first, like parents, so if we raise one, it'll grow strong enough to fly. So Heel leaned in and told Roydon he'd take an egg from him, then demanded to know exactly how much Roydon wanted for it. Roydon then jabbed a finger at Yggdrasil and asked, "Can I take some saplings from it?" Elto had turned into a barren wasteland, but he swore he could breathe it back to life, using Yggdrasil, just like the old days, when so many trees once stood there before they all vanished, and he was ready to plant them. Once the volcano finally calmed down, Rihanna lit up, thinking Roydon was ready to bring his home roaring back to life. But here's the twist, he wasn't doing it for some grand reason at all. He was eyeing profits, waiting for the moment to sell those saplings, just like any proper merchant would. Then he grabbed the saplings, and in return he got a dragon egg plus a haul of items from Mappa 2, study that. Roydon threw in an extra little thank you for the food from earlier, and then handed him a package stitched from the same material as the compression basket, packed with rocks and dirt he'd picked up along the road. Heel was thrilled, because that grit would help them grow and expand their fields. Roydon grinned, already sure Heel was about to become one of his regulars. After that, Roydon crashed into a night of rest, then came back with a promise to visit again, and nobody saw it coming. The very next person to become the Shield's first business partner was Camus at all. He realized the world wasn't over at all. There were continents like Elto, crawling with dragons, and that blew his mind. How many civilizations were out there just like that, including the one he had to know what was hiding under that shield, so he rushed back to where he first met Roydon and picked up their exploration of the ruins. He figured if the water was blasting out of the pillar like that, straight from the spring stones, then following the current was their best shot to uncover more about the ruins. He realized there was no way down that cliff without getting Taran's help. Ashton insisted he'd have zero trouble going down alone. Right after that, Rihanna jumped into their investigation team, buzzing with excitement, and she thanked Heel for letting her tag along as he dug deeper into the mystery of the Shield underground. Ashton shoved the plan into motion, telling him he'd go first, then ordering him to trail right behind, and bolted out of there without even a pause. Heel straight up couldn't believe it, and then it was Highness's turn to step forward next. He grabbed Fula and Reel and took them with him, right where Heel and Rihanna decided to head back down, and Tehran helped them do it. Rihanna was right there with him, and nerves almost swallowed him whole. But right now, he couldn't afford to let his focus slip. Before the investigation team rolled in earlier, he'll get ready by tending to his tools until everything's set. Rihanna locked eyes with him, and he grinned, telling her he'd learned how to tend to his tools from Mappa. Now his ice axe was shining like it meant business. Then she leaned in and asked if he was worried about the investigation of the new ruins. He couldn't help but show he was both dying to know and quietly scared about what his father was really after, because honestly, he had no clue what his father even used to think, since he'd never once tried to understand. He didn't even remember talking to him, except for the moments they traded stiff, proper words and obeyed the orders his father barked. But after that, he never heard a single thing from him again, because in the royal court, his father's words were law, carved in stone. So he figured he'd be furious if it turned out he was finally digging up exactly what his father had wanted all along. Rihanna stepped in, steadied him, and fired him up with pure determination. Go dig into Shield's secrets and uncover what his father was truly after. He was back, locked in with pure, unshakable determination as himself. And when he wanted to dig, he couldn't shake the feeling that even after turning his back on his father and his kingdom, it still didn't sit right. He finally had the nerve to look them in the eye as he hurtled down the cliff in Tehran, marking the next step in his relentless quest to uncover the Shield's secrets. As they dropped lower, Taran clung to her spider web like a lifeline, all for safety, and then, just a few meters below, he spotted a faint light glowing in the dark. They dropped down fast until they hit the bottom, staring up at a huge semidome of stone that loomed over them, while the canals carried the water rushing down from above. Rihanna looked around and knew time had chewed this place up bad, while Heel even wondered if the road ahead had stayed whole. But now, he couldn't help but wonder where the others had gone, and then Fuller shouted, "Heel," from the far side of the pillar, and told him they'd discovered a canal that plunged even deeper. She led him forward, and right there, Ashton was waiting too. While Highness lurked in the canal, he strained to catch every sound ahead of them. He tapped the walls with the back of his sword, then listened hard for every sound that came back. He was left wondering what he'd been doing, until he finally finished. Heinz returned, shot them a confident look, and swore the canal wasn't about to collapse. And the deeper they went, the whole thing got way more complicated. So yeah, there was real danger of getting lost in there too. Meanwhile, Heel froze when he realized Heenas could read all of that just by listening. Rihanna told them they could leave marks as they go so they never lose their way, and Fula practically buzzed with excitement for the journey ahead. They charged through the canal, then Heel's eyes widened in shock when he realized there was. So this whole thing had been down here the entire time, and he couldn't shake the question, who built it and why? Rihanna told him it had to be the humans, because they'd already spotted signs of something once, right by that statue of a woman in the library. Ashton said Berlian might have never known them, but their descendants. Those people could be scattered in some other land, far from here. Fuller then dropped that they could be digging in and living underground right here too, which fit perfectly with the underground people Roydon was talking about. Hunters were so focused until they spotted something lurking on their way. They rushed to check it, only to find it was nothing but a bunch of slimes. Hyle warned, "Leave the slimes alone, they're harmless." They finally uncovered the truth. Slimes weren't just out there, they were thriving underground too. And he'll remember running into shells and caves, too. Then one more name hit his brain, Mappa, and he and Mappa started wondering what era he even came from. Or maybe he knows a secret about these ruins. The canal in front of him didn't stop there, it funneled right into another one. They chased the sound of rushing water like it was a map. Then, right after that, they burst into a huge, open hallway that screamed, "Something enormous is about to happen." Hina said he tried to track the sound of water rushing underneath, and it was pulling him straight toward the gate, so he charged forward. And she'll spot it and start popping around on her heels, jumping like crazy. In the very next second, the door slammed shut, cutting off the. Right after using that entrance to slip in, they got sealed in, trapped inside with no way out. And Rihanna suddenly started to feel magical energy crawling out of the walls. Mysterious blocks began bursting out of the wall like something was breaking free, and then turned into a security drone. And it definitely looked like fresh trouble, right as it began to glow. Those drone shot rays tore through the air, and just as danger hits, he rips up a shield to save everyone, then he snaps, "Watch out," to the others. And he suddenly realized these drones weren't just machines. They were acting like security guards. He blasted them apart with thunder magic, but then, shocking him, the drone drank up his magic blast and fired it right back at them. He got blasted backward from the impact, and in that gut punch moment, he finally learned just what those drones could do. Fullest snapped that this way, he couldn't hit them at all. Then, one of the drones surged right up to her and drained the shield she had been holding. Things started to go horribly wrong for them. Ashton lunged forward and pulled the drone's attention straight onto him. Ashton snapped that if they couldn't blast these drones with magic, they'd have to slice them up instead. Then he swung in and cut down a few drones right near them. He geared up to smash in with his next attack, and that's when it became clear just how terrifyingly powerful Gale Ashton, the Imperial Guard captain of the Tybris tribe, really was. He sprinted forward and started picking off the drones far ahead. The drones snapped their aim at him, but he was so damn fast they couldn't even keep up. Speed Ashton sliced through them in an instant, and Rihanna, he was blown away by that kind of speed, like the crowd was roaring him on the whole time. Now that Ashton had smashed a bunch of drones, the rest started closing in from all. Then he turned around and headed straight for Ashton. He told the Highness that he should go help Ashton too, but the Highness waved him off and told him to rest assured, because his brother Ashton was all they needed on his own. Ashton totally shocked everyone by how insanely good he was in the battles. Then the drones swarmed him in perfect formation, bouncing heat rays off each other like they were choreographed to erase him, and somehow drove that blow into Ashton, but it barely fazed him. Even before he could breathe, dozens more drones closed in around him. Then Hines swung in with cover for Ashton, proving their teamwork was on a whole other level than the drones. And they tore through the fight with their own coordination attacks. That was literally their signature move. Ashton and Hines stormed straight into the drones' entire folk, taking them all on at once. Ashton ended it all with a lightning-fast shadow slash, so quick it made everyone swear he was everywhere at once. Every drone was wiped out before Heel could finish, and even some people started to realize it wasn't going to stop there. He told them the truth so they could finally heal and move on. Ashton and Hines pulled it off, and somehow everyone stayed safe. Then Heel tore into the wrecks to see what these golems were built from, and inside the broken drones, he found heart stones. He figured he could drain them and then turn all that into something brand new. He tracked down the very materials that made them, starting with a magic-absorbing crystal. They clutched a floating stone that let them soar, and black iron that armored them against every drop of heat. Filash shoved the floating stone into place, and it worked. Then Hyle cracked how those drones pulled it off, and suddenly he learned something brand new. Ashton leaned in and told him the drones looked like they were guarding something, so they had to go take a peek. Hyla nodded and agreed. Then right in front of them, the door swung open on its own. No smashing, no struggling, just a sudden invitation. Ashton felt it the moment the door creaked. Something was inside, just waiting. After they studied it close, a golem burst out through the door, and it only made things way worse for them. The moment a brand new opponent showed up, nobody was truly surprised. It felt like it was coming. He spotted the heartstone inside the thing, and his gut told him, this wasn't just any doll, it was another one. This time the golem looked downright unstoppable, like a welded nightmare of knight and horse, and Ashton snapped, don't take your eyes off it. And the golem suddenly started, speaking some unknown language out of nowhere. Hill nearly choked with shock when it started talking out loud, but the words still made zero sense to him. He kept wondering if something truly existed like a talking golem, but Fula shut that down fast, said it was all pure gibberish. Rihanna said the golems might speak the very same language as the books they found in the library earlier. He'll rush in to test whether the golem even understands him, speaking up and telling it he's from the surface above this land. The golem stared at him, completely clueless about every single word he said. Then it ripped out its sword and swung magic straight from its arm. Rihanna and Fula were left stunned, and Highness snapped at them to back up fast. Highness threw himself in front and snapped the golem's attack in half, while they still tried to make one thing crystal clear: they weren't its enemies. The golem doubled down on its assault, pouring out even more power with every hit. And Hina's finally understood. Fighting it was unavoidable now. Ashton burst into the fight and ordered Hines to try and trap the golem without cracking it. Then the two of them battled the golem side by side. But the golem turned out to be terrifyingly good too. It could keep pace with both of them at the same time. Steel met steel as they slammed into each other, and sword crashes filled the air, like the battlefield itself fought back. Ashton and Highness got shoved back by its attacks, and they instantly realized whatever was coming for them was terrifyingly good at what it did. Fuller decided to jump in and help them out. She unleashed devastating magic and drove into it. Then, even as Ashton fought to stop her, she didn't back down for a second. The golem shot up its left arm, crystal blazing and ready to swallow everything it touched. It swallowed her strike whole, and she said, "Sorry for making this so brutal." Ashton figured that was exactly what would happen. Then the golem snapped its arm into a crossbow, and then he loosed a blazing arrow, packed with fire magic. Everyone snapped to attention when the bow went off, and he immediately hurled a boulder right in front of them, blocking the arrows so they could stay safe. He shouted for everyone to duck behind it, but the golem kept clawing at them with relentless attacks. Right after that, the golem lunged at them, spear first, gripping the weapon in its arm, strong enough to smash the boulder they were ducking behind. Luckily, everyone juked at the last second, and the blast still missed every single one of them. And he'll realize this isn't just any golem or doll. It's on a whole different level than everything they've faced so far. Ashton realized they were way too naive if they thought they could actually catch it. So he cranked it up and blasted forward with its phantom dash, slicing through the air at wind-level speed. But somehow, the golem caught Ashton's attack coming from a mile away, like it had eyes in the dark, right as the strike landed. Even at that insane speed, it still slammed into Ashton, and Ashton snapped his sword up just in time to block the blow. And when he looked up, his shock hit hard. This golem actually matched his gale speed sprint. He finally got back, then the golem lunged in and attacked both of them, making them feel the tension of its next attack coming for them. It lunged at both of them with lightning speed, so fast that Rihanna and Fuller barely had time to react. Ashton and Hines got shoved back, and there was nothing they could do, no way to save them. Then it hits him an idea, and while Highness and Ashton were tearing things up, he teamed up with Rihanna and convinced himself it just might work. The second the situation reared its head, they launched their plan and went straight into action. Then he leaned in and asked Real, who'd been knocked out and sleeping inside his bag this whole time, to unleash its clairvoyance and lock onto the exact water line. And the moment he could finally see it with his own eyes, he drove his ice axe straight through it, shattering it to pieces. As soon as the water line got obliterated, Ashton and Heinous whip around and spot the impact closing in behind them. Soon, water surged in and swallowed the area, rising just a little above their feet. Then, he grabbed Hines and Ashton and ordered them to backpedal straight to the walls. Then, with Rihanna and Fury at his side, he snapped a freeze spell across every inch of water beneath them, sealing the whole surface solid while they hovered over the grove thanks to Tehran's spider webs. The golem exploded out of the water in a single leap, just to dodge that freeze attack. And in seconds, the entire area got sealed under a thick sheet of ice. Turns out, Heel was already lining up its hooves to slam right into its legs, which didn't look like it would hold up for ice skating movements at all. Then Taran flicked a web onto its leg and yanked it down hard. Ashton and Highness realized this was their opening, and they grabbed it. Then they swarmed the golem from both sides, leaping wall to wall like lightning. They thought they'd finally nailed the golem. Then the very next move shattered everything when it slammed down to the ground, to spring straight up and flaunt its speed, just like Ashton and Heinous did. Everyone gasped, because nobody saw that golem moving like a real person coming. Ashton and Hines stood in the middle, completely stunned and speechless. Before they even had time to realize what was happening, the golem stepped right between them, spun its arms around, and launched a relentless attack. He blasted them flying, smashing straight into the walls on either side. Heel's jaw dropped. Highness had truly stunned him too, about how Gola pulled off that impossible move out of nowhere. Then they realized its legs had twisted into sharp, pointy shapes. Then it snapped into its next move and went straight for Heel with the attack. Highness and Rihanna were too late. They raced for him, but they couldn't make it in time to save him. And Heel knew there was no escaping it, so he steeled himself and charged straight into it head-on. Then a shell rolled in front of him, and he snapped at it to be careful. Yet Shell didn't move, because it stayed put to shield Heel. But the golem suddenly slammed on the brakes when it saw the shell. They never saw it coming. Golem snapped back from his heel like it was the end of the fight. Other people rushed in to heal him on the spot and kept asking if he was okay. But Ashton couldn't shake the question. Why did the golem suddenly stop attacking them? The golem just stood there, staring as Shell clashed her way into Heel's kindness and treated him like a friend. The golem finally started talking again, but this time, its voice hit different than ever before. He'll wonder where that thing is even coming from. Then Highness leaned in and told him, it's coming from inside the golem. And the thing's belly mechanism snapped open, piece by piece. But just when everyone thought they'd seen everything, a little girl burst out of the golem, rubbing her sleepy eyes like she'd just woken up. They realized they'd been battling a kid this whole time, one who was secretly steering the golem. But that's when it hit them. This golem was talking to her, and she answered back in a language nobody knew, not even the Heel. Then she locked eyes with Heel, and despite all her flaws, she still managed to speak his language. Phil leaned in and asked, can you actually understand us? The little girl shot back, don't worry, I'll learn your language just by listening to you talk. They couldn't stop themselves from staring. This kid's brain power was unreal. They were stunned when a kid burst out of a golem in the underground ruins, and somehow learned to talk to them in next to no time. She tried to make it to Heel, but the ice betrayed her. She slipped hard. He blurted, are you okay? And she answered him with a message straight to the golem, and it surged in to carry her away. Then she spotted the hole in the canal, and she snapped out the commands, which froze the current for a while, stopping the water cold. And with her next command, the flying drone, trouble just kept multiplying. Drones burst out from the door straight ahead. They were full of thoughts, thinking those guys were reinforcements. And then, when the little kid named the drones Argo, and ordered them to leave everyone alone, he'll finally realize it was their name all along. And then the drones unleashed some wild magic inside themselves, and they started patching that shattered canal. They finally got it. She was really barking orders to the dolls. The kid shot them a question, what happened to the Argo? And she realized with a sinking gut they'd been wiped out by them. And he'll scrambled to explain that he had no other option, apologizing for it again and again. After that, the kid finally listened, then learned they came straight from the surface. And he'll even beg her forgiveness, apologizing for wrecking the ruins. But he refused to let it go. He had to uncover why his father shoved him here, and he pushed the kid to spill everything he knew about these ruins down here. She finally clocked it, like it was her first time ever learning the truth, that she'd been underground this whole time, which still hit like a total curveball for Heel. And she knew for the first time she'd truly hit rock bottom. She was staring straight at the wreckage. It looked like she'd been asleep for ages, and when she finally woke up, she had zero clue where she was. Heel realized her memory could be messed up, so he pressed her. Why was she guarding the ruins, and who was she really? She snapped back that defending this land was her duty, no excuses. And she couldn't recall a single thing, just that one detail, while meanwhile Fuller shivered hard from the cold, sneezed, blurted sorry, and then, she couldn't stop shivering. This place was brutally cold. He'll ask the kid if they can go somewhere else, and when he says yes, he'll go along with it. Honestly, it's their own fault for letting it happen. Then the kid demanded, why did the Carvo, your slime shell, shield you from the Bolshan's attack? Bolshan, the golem, came in hard and shoved Ashton and Hines straight into a corner earlier. He told her his name was Shell, his best friend, and swore Shell had saved him countless times. The kid actually listened, then told them, follow me, and marched right after her. He'll turn to her and demand what they should call her. She didn't seem to get it at all. Then he'd corner her and ask what the Bolshans called her when they talked. Just like that, his name was Heel, and he pulled the spotlight by introducing everyone else too. She finally got it. Back then, a name wasn't just a label to them. It was everything that kept people apart. So she leaned in and told them, just call me Nonne. Rihanna and Heel told her, it was so nice meeting you. Nonno leaned in and warned that he'd look like he had a weird feature. Then she straight up revealed it was his Cave King crest. Then they bolted for the door up ahead, and the moment they stepped inside, Argo got activated for round 2, but Nonne barked an order, no attacking them. She told them with full confidence that Argo wouldn't dare attack as long as she was with them. Fuller pressed Nonne for what language she spoke, but she couldn't name it. She only knew it existed. And somehow, it looked like she hadn't talked to anyone at all, except Bolshian. Fuller asked if she was feeling lonely, and she shot back that there was no shortage of people, like she was looking at everything through a strict, system-first lens. Rihanna and Heel were stunned. Nonne was picking up the Balian language at lightning speed, and it was honestly unbelievable. Fuller then pushed the idea that they should bring Nonne to the library, because she could read the whole thing. But Nonne slammed the brakes and told them, I can't leave this place. Fuller promised her she'd be welcomed with open arms, and if they can crack the secrets of Sheol, she might even get her memory back. Even without her memories, None insisted she still had to stand her post and guard this place, because if she vanished, the defenders and the golems would lose control, and that would unleash a disaster all on its own. Rihanna said next time she'll show up with a stack of books. They finally reached this massive mysterious door, and None leaned in and said the real main area was on the other side. Highness then caught the scent of something up ahead, and it sent his instincts straight on alert. He couldn't even process it. This had to be underground, right? Heel was left totally baffled. Then None snapped her order and the gate thundered open. Right as the gate cracked open, a blinding beam of light burst through like a flare from another world. Everyone froze in disbelief, staring like they couldn't even process what they were seeing as they stared ahead, the path looked totally unreal, like it didn't belong in this world at all. They couldn't shake the feeling they'd slipped outside. Everything around them was drenched in wild greenery. And get this, the river running right through the place was packed with fish. Heel snapped their gaze up at the ceiling, double-checking they were truly trapped inside the ruins. And then it hit him, there was a massive sunstone right there, waiting to be found. And he heard Riel barking with joy, as she spotted even more slimes crawling around in that place. And yeah, there were golems too, which honestly blew me away, but they're basically guardians of the place, trimming the leaves just right so everything stays perfectly shaped and stunning. None snapped at them, "Don't spook the Carvo," and Heel pressed her about the slimes too, and she nodded, because guarding the Carvo was right in her job. Then a memory slammed into Heel, so he turned to None and demanded, "Who gave you this duty?" And she said it was confusing even to her, like she couldn't pin it down or explain it. Then she started thinking hard about it, and told him, "Just watch, this will be easier than me explaining." Then she led them on, and they couldn't stop soaking it in. The gorgeous path stretched ahead like a tunnel of trees, just glowing around them. She led them straight to the spot where she'd first opened her eyes, and where she'd gotten assigned her duty. She grabbed his attention and started spilling her story from the very beginning. She jolted awake in total darkness, staring at nothing while her body felt squeezed and cramped. Then, once she stepped into that brighter world, the very first thing she saw was Bolshan down on his knees beside her. And the second thing she spotted was a statue of a woman. She led them to the statue, and they couldn't believe what they were seeing. To see it was the very same woman who'd been sitting in the library. He grilled None, demanding to know who she was, yet she stared back blank, with zero memory of herself. But the second she laid eyes on her, a single truth hit her: protect her no matter what. It was just one word, but she instantly understood exactly what she had to fight to keep safe. Even though that stone statue never once talked, it still stuck in her mind like a haunted fragment. Once she finally felt important, he started feeling sorry for her, and he told her she might still be able to carry out her duty, protecting everyone, even without her memories. But he insisted she had to get her memories back, at least the part she'd lost, no matter what. Who the statue woman really was, because None acted like she mattered a whole lot. Everyone else lit up when they heard Heel's words to None, but she refused, not because she didn't care, because she had no clue what he wanted her to do, and her sharp mind knew his argument had zero real footing. When she said that, he flinched and rushed to explain why feelings mattered. But he had zero clue how to do it, until None spotted it. Something happened and she turned back to the statue. She stepped closer and he hurried after her, demanding to know what just happened. None then admitted she barely even looked at that detail on the statue, because she had no clue what it was supposed to mean. And when Heel finally saw what she was talking about, shock hit him so hard he couldn't even react. None leaned in and grilled him about that wild coincidence. What in the world was the Cave King's crest doing on that statue? So tell me, what was he actually doing?